The Great Sphinx is located in Giza, Egypt. It faces east toward the rising sun and is believed to have been built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 BCE. What do you think about the Great Sphinx? Is it its broken nose? Under that giant stone body, there are dark pockets in the rock where your feet have never stood, and where water quietly sits, like the ground is holding its breath. Because here's the thing nobody tells you when they show you that famous postcard photo. The Sphinx isn't just a statue. It's a site, a place that has been dug into, patched up, buried, uncovered, reburied, and argued over for thousands of years. And if you've ever stared at the Sphinx and thought, okay, but what's under it? You're not weird. You're human. Tonight, we're doing something simple. We're going to walk right down the line between hard archaeology and forbidden archaeology, between ancient mysteries and hidden history, between the facts you can touch and the stories that refuse to die. And yes, this is a sleep, stories, history kind of ride. Relaxing, easy to follow, no heavy words, but still just creepy enough to make you pull your blanket a little higher. So settle in, because our question sounds small, but it's huge. What's covered beneath the Sphinx? And when this video ends, you'll know two things at the same time. 1. What experts say it is down there. 2. Why so many people swear something bigger is being hidden. And by the way, if you like lost civilizations, ancient technology, pyramids of Giza mysteries, and those slow, relaxing history deep dives that feel like a documentary for sleep, please subscribe. Seriously, you'll love what we're building here. All right, picture this. It's late. The Giza Plateau is quiet. The city lights are far enough away that the desert still feels like a desert. And the Sphinx is just there. That face, that stare, like it knows something you don't. Now imagine you're standing beside it and someone leans in and whispers, down there are tunnels. Not metaphor tunnels, not the tunnel of imagination. Real holes in limestone, real shafts, real places where people have climbed down with flashlights and said, yep, this is a thing. And suddenly the Sphinx stops being a statue and starts being a question. Because the question isn't only what is the Sphinx, it becomes, what did people do around it? What did they dig? What did they hope to find? And here's the wild part. For a long time, the Sphinx was buried up to its neck in sand. Not for a day, not for a year, for centuries at a time. So for generations of people, the Sphinx wasn't even a lion body. It was basically a stone head sticking out of a sandy ocean, which means the ground around it was always shifting, covering, uncovering, hiding, revealing, almost like the desert itself was playing keep away. And humans hate not knowing. So people started telling stories, and some of those stories became so popular that they still breathe today. Let's start with the part that's real, the part we can say without crossing our fingers, the part that's basically the mainstream view. The first big truth, the Sphinx area has been poked and prodded like crazy. If you hear someone say, nobody's ever looked under the Sphinx, that's just not true. People have looked. A lot. In the 1800s, early explorers and treasure hunters were obsessed with the idea that the Sphinx was hiding something. And to be fair, if you saw a giant stone lion king staring at you for the first time, you'd probably assume it had secrets too. One of the famous early diggers cleared sand around the Sphinx's chest. And guess what he found? Stone, limestone, hard rock. No secret door with a glowing symbol. No stairs spiraling down into an Atlantean library. Just rock. So for a while, the vibe was, okay, it's solid, mystery solved. But then, time passed. Restoration work happened. More careful mapping happened. And people started realizing something that changes everything. The Sphinx isn't perfectly solid. There are openings, shafts, passages, not huge ones, not Indiana Jones running from a boulder ones, but enough to keep the imagination awake at night. So what are these known tunnels? Let's talk about them like a friend explaining it to you while you're half asleep. Tunnel number 1, the head hole that makes everyone nervous. There's an opening on top of the Sphinx's head. Yes, really. And if you're thinking, Why is there a hole in the head of the world's most famous statue? Welcome to the club. People see that opening and their brain immediately goes secret entrance, hidden chamber, ancient technology room, alien charging station. But the boring answer, the boring history for sleep. Answer is usually the true one, Sam. That hole is believed to be a shaft from exploration or restoration work, or possibly something unfinished from ancient times. And when people looked inside, it didn't lead to some grand underground world. It was basically a narrow shaft, no hallway, no big vault, no Hall of Records sign, just down and then nowhere. So if you came for a magical door, you'd leave disappointed. But if you came for reality, you'd leave with something more interesting. A reminder that humans have been messing with this monument for a long, long time. Tunnel number 2, a small shaft behind the Dream Stele. Behind the Sphinx, there's a famous stone slab called the Dream Stele. It's like a giant ancient storytime tablet. And near that area, there's another shaft. Again, people got excited. Again, people hoped it was something big. Again, dead end. But even dead ends matter, because dead ends prove the landscape isn't simple. It's not just one block of stone. It's a place where people dug, stopped, dug again, stopped again. And that pattern tells you something. People kept trying, which means people kept believing. And belief is a powerful shovel. Tunnel number 3, the one near the rump that feels like a real tunnel. Now this is the one that makes the story feel real. There's a passage on the Sphinx's back end, near the tail area, a tight tunnel that goes downward. Not super deep, roughly a few meters, but deep enough to feel like you're leaving the world. And here's the detail I love, because it sounds like a movie. Researchers in modern times were guided to it by an elderly local man who remembered seeing it when he was a boy. That's such a human detail. Not a satellite detected it, not a machine predicted it, just a person saying, I remember. And they explored it. And what did they find? Not a library, not golden tablets, not a secret stash of pharaoh cheat codes. They found a tunnel that stops, part of it flooded with groundwater, no treasure, no inscriptions, no big chamber, just rock and water and a dead end. And the conclusion many mainstream researchers lean toward is this. It was likely dug by treasure hunters long after the Sphinx was built. People with a simple hope, maybe there's something valuable under here. That's the mainstream view in a nutshell. Yes, there are shafts and passages, but they don't lead to grand secret rooms, as far as official documentation shows. A lot of what's beneath is natural rock features, cracks, and cavities. So if this story ended here, it would be calm. A little disappointing, like opening a birthday gift and finding socks. Useful socks, but still socks. Except, this story does not end here. Because right when the facts settle down, the forbidden theories wake up. And they wake up loud. So before we cross into that next layer, if you're the kind of person who loves ancient mysteries, hidden history, and those what if everything we know is wrong rabbit holes, please subscribe, because the next part is where the internet basically loses its mind. Ready? Okay, lower your voice in your head. Pretend we're whispering, because now we're entering the story that refuses to die. The forbidden theory, the Hall of Records. The Hall of Records is one of those ideas that sounds like it was born in an ancient temple. But surprise, it didn't start in a pharaoh's tomb. It became famous in modern times, and its biggest early promoter wasn't an Egyptologist with a dusty hat. It was a psychic. Yes, a psychic. His name was Edgar Cayce. And he made claims that were so specific that people still argue about them almost 100 years later. Cayce said that a lost civilization, Atlantis, left a hidden library on the Giza Plateau, a vault of knowledge, a record of humanity, a stash of ancient wisdom that could change everything. And according to the story, this library, this Hall of Records, had an entrance near the Sphinx, even more specific, near the right paw. Now let's pause and be honest. If someone says there's an ancient secret library under the Sphinx, your brain does two things. One, it laughs a little. Two, it leans in anyway, because even if you don't believe it, part of you wants it to be true. Not because you're gullible, because the world is more fun when it's mysterious. And the Sphinx is basically the king of mysterious. So the Hall of Records theory grows. It spreads. And for decades, it sits in that category of stories people tell late at night, like a bedtime stories rumor. Until something happens that changes everything. Modern tech steps into the desert, and the desert answers in a weird way. The moment the world went, wait, what is that? In the 1990s, researchers used scanning methods, things like ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys. Basically, tools that tried to see under the ground without digging everything up. And the scans picked up anomalies. Think of anomalies like this. Imagine you tap on a wall. Most of the wall sounds solid, but one part sounds hollow. You don't know what's behind it, but you know something is different. That's an anomaly. The scans suggested there were cavities in the bedrock under and around the Sphinx. And one anomaly, according to the popular telling, lined up with where Case said the entrance would be near that right paw. And people said it looked symmetrical, like a room, like a chamber. And suddenly, the story level jumps from fun myth to, what if? Because when a myth lines up with something that looks scientific, people don't stay calm. They go full detective mode. They go full conspiracy mode. They go full, my uncle told me the government is hiding it. And to make it even more dramatic, this kind of discovery ended up in documentaries and TV specials. Millions of people watched, and for a moment, it felt like the world was right on the edge of a huge reveal. Like the next drill hole would break into a secret chamber, and someone would shine a flashlight inside, and we'd all see ancient tablets, perfectly stacked, waiting like they were preserved by magic. A real ancient technology fantasy, a real lost civilization's dream, a real hidden history exposed moment. But here's the thing about suspense. Sometimes the monster isn't in the closet. Sometimes it's just a coat. So what happened when they drilled? The reality check. What did the drills find? This is where the story splits people into teams. Team 1 says, drill and prove it. Team 2 says, protect the monument, don't mess it up. Team 3 says, they already found it and they're lying. Team 4 says, I'm just here for the bum. When drilling was done into some of these promising spots, the results, according to the mainstream conclusion, were painfully unromantic. Water, sand, natural voids, natural cracks. Basically, geology doing geology things. And this matters. So let me explain it simply. The Giza Plateau is limestone. Limestone can develop natural cavities over long periods, especially when water and time do their slow magic. These are called karst features. You don't need Atlantis for that. You don't need aliens. You just need rock and time. So what looked like a neat room on a fuzzy scan could, on closer inspection, be a natural hollow. Not a library, just a pocket in the stone. And mainstream archaeology also points to other evidence, like the surrounding structures, temples, tombs, and the general context of the plateau that ties the Sphinx strongly to Old Kingdom Egypt around 2500 BC, which clashes hard with Atlantis timeline. And now we're in the heart of the argument. Is the Sphinx a 4,500-year-old monument built by known ancient Egyptians? Or is it far older, linked to a lost age, a time of heavy rains, a forgotten civilization? This is where one controversial idea enters. The age debate, rain, erosion, and the older than we think claim. Some researchers, most famously people like John Anthony West and geologist Robert Schoch, argued that erosion patterns on the Sphinx and its enclosure look like water damage. Not just wind, not just sand, but rain. And if heavy rain caused that erosion, they argued, then the Sphinx would have to be much older, because Egypt hasn't had that kind of rainfall in a very long time. So they pushed the date back, way back, to something like 10,000 years ago. And if that's true, then mainstream history gets a headache, because now the Sphinx isn't just ancient Egypt documentary territory. It becomes lost civilizations territory. And if it's that old, then the Hall of Records story suddenly feels less silly to believers. Like, maybe Case wasn't making it up. But mainstream experts push back. Hard. They argue the weathering can be explained by other factors. The limestone quality, moisture, salt, wind erosion, time, restoration history, environmental conditions. In other words, you don't need a lost civilization to explain this. So you end up with two big voices shouting across the desert. One says, look at the evidence, something doesn't fit. The other says, look at the evidence, it fits fine. And meanwhile, the Sphinx just sits there like, y'all done yet? Now, let's do something fair. Let's offer a contrarian perspective that isn't just Atlantis is real or everything is nonsense. Here's the middle thought. What if both sides missing something? Mainstream archaeology is right about one big thing. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. You can't just say Atlantis library because a scan looks boxy. You need physical proof, artifacts, inscriptions, something. But the forbidden archaeology crowd is right about something too. History has surprises, big ones, and the Giza Plateau has revealed unexpected things before. Even in recent times, other big discoveries on the plateau have shown that we know everything already is a dangerous sentence. So the honest stance, if you're trying to be calm and real, is this. We have confirmed small tunnels and shafts. We have scans that can show anomalies but can be misread. We have drilling results that often point to natural cavities in water. We do not have confirmed proof of a giant secret library under the Sphinx. But the plateau still has mysteries, and the story keeps evolving. And that's exactly why this topic is perfect for bedtime history, because it's not just facts. It's human hunger, it's curiosity, it's the feeling of standing near something ancient and thinking, surely there's more. Now, right here, this is where a lot of people drift off to sleep. But if you're still awake, if your eyes are heavy but your curiosity is heavier, let me drop a midway hook that usually wakes people right back up. If you stay with me, here's what you'll get next. In the next stretch, we're going to cover the 3 beneath the Sphinx questions nobody can agree on. Why tunnels that lead nowhere still matter. What a natural cave can look like on scans, and why it fools people. The one simple reason the Hall of Records story will never die. A calm, relaxing ending that leaves you with wonder, not fear. So if you like relaxing documentary vibes, but you also like that little pinch of suspense, stay with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. All right, back into the sand we go. 3 questions nobody can agree on. Question 1. If those tunnels are dead ends, why were they dug at all? This question sounds small, but it's not, because even empty tunnels tell a story. A tunnel can be an ancient attempt to explore, a treasure hunter's guess, a restoration pathway, a natural crack that got widened later, a quarry cut, a repair channel, or just a hole somebody made because humans are curious. And that means the Sphinx wasn't just built and left alone. It was interacted with over and over. And that's important because it means people were always thinking there might be something here. Humans are pattern hunters. We see a great monument and we assume it has secret compartments because we build like that too. We put things in drawers. We hide things in boxes. We stash things under beds. We're basically squirrels with Wi-Fi. So the tunnels match human nature, but they don't confirm Atlantis. They confirm curiosity. Question 2. Can scans really see chambers under the Sphinx? Scans can help. They can show differences in density. They can suggest voids. But scans are not magic. A scan is like hearing a sound through a wall. You're interpreting, you're guessing, and if you want a chamber to be there, your brain will help you see it. That's not even a conspiracy. That's psychology. If I tell you there's a face in the clouds, you'll suddenly see faces everywhere. Same with radar anomalies. So you can have honest scientists looking at the same data and disagreeing. And that creates tension because people don't like uncertainty. They want a clear answer, but reality is often maybe. Question 3. If there's nothing, why are people so protective and secretive? This is the one that fuels the fire. Because when authorities restrict access or say no more drilling, some people hear they're hiding it. But there's also a boring reason. The Sphinx is fragile. The limestone is not perfect. The groundwater is a problem. The monument has been restored many times, and drilling is risky. So no drilling can mean we're protecting the site, not we're hiding Atlantis. The problem is, both explanations can sound the same from far away. And that's why the story stays alive. Because every no creates a louder what if. Now let's zoom out slowly like a calm camera drift in a history documentary. The pyramids of Egypt are nearby. The Great Pyramid towers like a mountain made by human hands. The temples and causeways sit like pieces of a giant puzzle. And you start to realize something. Even if there is no Hall of Records, the place is still unbelievable. Because ancient Egyptians didn't need Atlantis to amaze us. They were already operating at a level that still makes modern people squint like, how did you do that with copper tools and a strong work ethic? And that brings us to a softer kind of suspense. The real mystery might not be what's hidden, but how they did what we can see. Sometimes the forbidden part isn't what's underground. It's what's right in front of our faces. A giant sculpture carved from bedrock, aligned with temples, surrounded by structures that fit into a larger plan. A whole landscape built to last. If you want a hidden history moment, here it is. The ancient world wasn't simple. It wasn't dumb. It wasn't primitive. It was different, and it was clever. And that's why the phrase ancient technology is tricky, because people hear technology and think microchips. But technology really means methods, skills, systems, knowledge. The ancient Egyptians had those, a lot of them. So when someone says, only a lost civilization could build this, a fair response is, or maybe the civilization we already know was just better than we give it credit for. That's a contrarian take, and it's healthy because it respects the people who actually live there. But we can also be honest. Sometimes history has gaps, and gaps invite stories. And stories, especially sleep stories, wrap around those gaps like a warm blanket. So let's talk about why the Hall of Records story is still here. Why the Hall of Records story will never die. It's not just because of scans. It's not just because of a psychic. It's because the Hall of Records is a perfect human fantasy. Think about what it promises. A single hidden room that explains everything. A lost book of truth. A secret that changes humanity. Proof that we're connected to something bigger. A golden age we forgot. It's basically the same emotional shape as buried pirate treasure, a magic diary, a secret map, a hidden level in a video game, a lost episode of your favorite show. It's the idea that the world still has surprises. And when modern life feels too loud, too stressful, too repetitive, that idea is comforting. It says, don't worry, there's more. And that's why this topic fits perfectly into relaxing history and bedtime stories energy. Because at night, when your brain slows down, you don't just want information. You want wonder. You want mystery. You want the feeling that the world is bigger than your to-do list. And the Sphinx gives that feeling for free. Now, let's do one more slow walk through what we can say calmly without yelling. So what is actually covered beneath the Sphinx? If we keep it simple, so simple a 10-year-old could get it, here's the best grounded answer. Beneath the Sphinx, there is limestone. That limestone has natural cracks and cavities. People have dug small shafts and tunnels in and around the Sphinx at different times. Some of those tunnels go down a little way and then stop. Some areas have groundwater, and despite decades of searching, no officially confirmed giant secret chamber has been revealed beneath it. That's the mainstream answer. But here's the twist that keeps the night alive. Even that answer doesn't kill the mystery. Because no big chamber confirmed is not the same thing as nothing interesting. It just means the big fantasy hasn't been proven. Yet. And humans love the word yet. Now we're coming toward the end, and I want to land this in a way that feels good. Not anxious, not paranoid, not everyone is lying. Just thoughtful. Because the best sleep stories, history leave you with peace. So let me give you a final image. The soft ending, the Sphinx as a guardian of questions. Imagine sand drifting across the plateau. Imagine time passing like a slow river. Empires rise, empires fall. Languages change, clothes change, beliefs change, and through it all, the Sphinx stays, sometimes buried, sometimes uncovered, sometimes repaired, sometimes cracked, always watching. And maybe the real Hall of Records isn't a room under the paw. Maybe it's the plateau itself, a record written in stone, weather, tools, temples, and human footsteps. A record that we're still reading, slowly, carefully, and yes, sometimes with a little bit of wild imagination. Because imagination is not the enemy of history. It's often the spark that pushes people to explore, to study, to scan, to dig carefully, to preserve, to learn. So here's my honest take, as your calm voice in the dark. If you want the safe answer, under the Sphinx are natural features and a few small tunnels. Interesting but not magical. If you want the wonder answer, the Sphinx still has unanswered questions, and the Giza Plateau has surprised people before. And if you want the human answer, the Sphinx inspires us because it feels like a doorway, even if the doorway is inside our minds. Now I'll ask you the question the Sphinx has been asking silently for thousands of years. What do you think? Do you think there's a lost library waiting to be found? Or do you think the tunnels are just dead ends? And the real treasure is the story we keep telling. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this blend of ancient mysteries, hidden history, lost civilizations, pyramids of Giza wonder, and relaxing documentary storytelling, please subscribe, hit the bell, and come back for the next ancient Egypt documentary sleep journey. Because the desert is full of quiet secrets, and we're just getting started. That means the Sphinx did its job, or maybe you did, because most people tap out right when the story gets quiet, right when the desert starts sounding like a lullaby. But you want the next layer. The layer under the layer, the part where the facts don't scream, but they whisper. So let's keep going, and just so we're locked in together, remember the title frame you came in with. What's covered beneath the Sphinx? Forbidden archaeology. Sleep stories. At the start, you probably knew the basic idea. The Sphinx is ancient. People talk about tunnels. People talk about the Hall of Records. But now you also know what matters most. There are real documented shafts and passages, but they don't prove a hidden library. So the real mystery shifts. It's not, is there anything under the Sphinx? It's, why do we keep thinking there's something under the Sphinx? And the answer isn't just geology. It's not just radar. It's not just lost civilizations. It's human nature. So tonight we're going to keep it relaxing, like a documentary for sleep. But we're also going to keep it sharp, because if you look closely, the Sphinx isn't only guarding tombs, it's guarding a pattern. A pattern humans repeat everywhere on Earth. Big monument plus time plus silence or rumors. And rumors, my friend, are like sand. They get into everything. The Sphinx's first trick, it disappears and then comes back. Here's something people don't fully feel until they really sit with it. For long stretches of history, the Sphinx was basically gone. Not fully gone, but buried, covered, swallowed by sand. So imagine this. You're a traveler 800 years ago. You walk across the Giza Plateau. The pyramids are there, massive, impossible, like stone mountains. And nearby, you see a giant head sticking out of the ground. Just a head. No body, no paws, just that face, half buried. And you ask the locals, what is that? And they answer in a tone that basically says, that thing? Yeah, it's been here longer than anyone knows. That's how myths are born, because when something is half hidden, your brain fills in the missing part. It's like seeing one page of a book and deciding you already know the ending. And the Sphinx gives you just enough to trigger your imagination. You think, if it's buried, maybe it's hiding something. And that thought, simple, innocent, becomes a seed. Now water it with centuries. Now add treasure hunters. Now add spiritual seekers. Now add modern scanning technology. Now add a psychic with confidence. And boom, you've got a global obsession. A quick bedtime detour. The Dream Stele story, because it's actually creepy in a soft way. Let's talk about that big stone slab between the Sphinx's paws. The Dream Stele. This is one of those ancient mysteries that feels like a bedtime story, but it's written in stone. The story goes like this. A young prince, later pharaoh, falls asleep near the Sphinx, and in his dream, the Sphinx speaks. It tells him something like, "Look at me, I'm buried. Clear the sand, help me." And in return, the prince is promised kingship. So the prince wakes up, and later when he becomes pharaoh, he honors that dream by clearing the sand and placing this stele. Now, whether you take that as literal or symbolic, it doesn't matter for our purpose. What matters is the vibe, because that story does something powerful. It connects the Sphinx to the idea of a message, a secret, a promise, a hidden truth that only certain people can access. So even in ancient times, the Sphinx wasn't just a statue. It was treated like a living guardian, a spiritual gatekeeper. And when you mix that with the physical fact that it keeps getting buried, you create the perfect atmosphere for hidden history. The Sphinx's second trick, it looks like it should have a secret room. Be honest, if you built something that big, wouldn't you hide something inside? Humans do this. We put time capsules in walls. We bury cornerstones. We hide notes under floors. We lock valuables in vaults. So the idea that the Sphinx might have a chamber underneath feels natural, not scientific, but natural. And that's why you don't have to be into conspiracy theories to wonder. You just have to be human. And that's why this topic is perfect for relaxing history and sleep stories, because you can float between what we know, what we suspect, what we wish, without getting angry, without getting loud, just curious. The early diggers, the moment the Sphinx became a hunt. Now let's go a little deeper into the history of people digging around the Sphinx. And I promise I'll make it simple. The 1800s were basically the Wild West of archaeology. People were excited, but they weren't always careful. Some were scholars, some were treasure hunters in fancy coats. And many had one thought: if Egypt is full of gold, the biggest statue must have the biggest stash. So digging begins, clearing sand begins, poking begins, and for a while, it looks like the Sphinx is just solid rock. But the digging doesn't stop because humans don't stop. We're like that one friend who keeps shaking a vending machine even after it already ate the money. And then in the 1900s, restoration becomes more organized, more recorded, more official. And that's when some key discoveries come out. Openings, shafts, places where the stone has been cut into. And it doesn't prove Atlantis, but it proves this: the Sphinx has been entered and tested multiple times, which means the question, what's underneath, is not a new question. It's an old itch, a very old itch. Beneath the Sphinx, the geology nobody wants to talk about because it ruins the vibe. Okay, calm voice, soft tone. This is the part where the documentary for sleep gets a little science-y, but not in a hard way. Just in a let me explain like your 10 way. The Giza Plateau is made of limestone. Limestone can have cracks, fissures, pockets, voids. Sometimes those voids form naturally, especially over long time spans. And here's the killer detail. Those natural pockets can look squarish or chamber-like on scanning tools. Not because they were carved, but because nature doesn't always do perfect curves. Sometimes nature breaks rock along lines, along weaknesses, along layers. So a scan might show something that looks like a rectangle, but it's just a natural cavity. This is one reason mainstream archaeologists keep saying, be careful, because the scanning tech isn't a magic X-ray. It's interpretation. It's a reading of signals. And the human brain loves to see patterns. We see faces in toast. We see animals in clouds. We see a room in a radar blob. So what did the drills often find when they tested these anomalies? Water, sand, natural voids. And the believers say that's what they want you to think. And the skeptics say, well, that's exactly what we said it was. And the Sphinx says nothing, because stone has patience. But what about the forbidden archaeology crowd? Let's be fair. Now, I'm not going to do that lazy thing where we say, everyone who believes in lost civilizations is dumb. That's not fair. Some people in the forbidden archaeology space are genuinely curious. Some just don't trust authorities. Some have seen history change before and think, if we were wrong about other things, we can be wrong again. That's not crazy. History is full of updates, and sometimes mainstream experts have been wrong in the past. So let's give the strongest version of the forbidden angle in a calm way. The strongest forbidden argument sounds like this. Look, the Sphinx is weird. The Giza Plateau is weird. The scale is insane. The alignment is insane. We still debate construction methods. We still find surprises. So why is it impossible that there's a hidden chamber we haven't accessed yet? That's the clean version. Not aliens did it. Not secret government. Just, we might still be missing something. And you know what? That's reasonable. But here's the important line. Missing something doesn't automatically mean Hall of Records. It could mean an unfinished cut, a natural cave, a repair tunnel, a small shrine space, a later burial, a worker's feature, a drainage path, or something we haven't named yet. So the right emotional posture is not certainty, it's curiosity. The Sphinx and the pyramids, why people connect them underground. Now let's talk about something that keeps coming back in rumors. Are there tunnels linking the Sphinx to the pyramids of Giza? This is a classic, and it makes sense emotionally, because when you stand on that plateau, everything feels connected. The pyramids of Egypt look like they belong to a grand plan. The temples align, the causeways stretch like stone rivers. So your brain says, there must be an underground network too. But here's the boring answer again. Most tunnel talk historically came from misunderstandings, exaggerations, and people seeing surface structures and imagining they continued below. That doesn't mean there are no underground features at Giza. There are. There are tomb shafts. There are quarries. There are natural voids. There are cut chambers in different areas of the plateau. But a clean subway line from the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid? That's more story than proof. Still, Nita, it's a great story. And great stories survive, especially in sleep stories history, because the mind likes the idea of hidden passageways. It feels like a secret door inside the world. The Hall of Records again. But this time, let's talk about why it hit so hard in the 1990s. The 1990s were a perfect storm. You had TV documentaries exploding, mystery history becoming mainstream entertainment, new scanning tech becoming accessible, public fascination with ancient technology and hidden history, and a world that loved big reveals. So when people heard, scans show a chamber near the right paw, just where Case predicted, it didn't matter if it was confirmed. The story was too tasty. It felt like a movie plot. Psychic prophecy meets modern tech. Lost civilizations meet real drilling. Atlantis meets Egypt. That is a blockbuster recipe. And the emotional core of it is this. What if the past is bigger than we were told? People love that question because it makes life feel like a mystery worth living. Like you're not just paying bills, you're living on a planet with secrets. And then the twist, the kind that makes you sigh in the dark when drilling or closer studies didn't reveal a magical library. People reacted in predictable ways. Some said, okay, it's natural rock, interesting, but not Atlantis. Some said they drilled the wrong spot. Some said they found it and covered it up. Some said, even if it's natural, the Sphinx is still amazing. And that last group, that's the group I like, because they're not addicted to the fantasy. They're not angry about the reality. They can hold wonder either way. And honestly, that's the healthiest way to enjoy ancient mysteries. A slow suspense moment. The groundwater problem. This is where it gets eerie. Now let me tell you something that sounds small but feels scary when you picture it. The area around the Sphinx has groundwater issues. That means water can sit down in tunnels or lower cavities, and water changes everything. Water can weaken limestone, fill shafts, hide features, damage restoration work, limit access. So even if there was something deeper down, water makes it harder to explore safely. And if you're imagining some ancient chamber, picture it flooded, silent, dark, like the earth is protecting it with a layer of liquid time. Now, I'm not saying that proves a secret library. I'm saying it adds to the atmosphere. It makes the underground feel alive. It makes the Sphinx feel like it's standing on a sleeping sea. And if you're listening to this as bedtime history, that image is going to follow you into your dreams. A stone lion king above a hidden wet world, guarding quiet pockets of darkness. Let's zoom out for relaxing history. What we do know about hidden spaces at Giza. Even if the Sphinx isn't hiding a hall of records, the Giza Plateau absolutely has hidden spaces. Tombs, shafts, chambers, worker areas, quarries. And that's important because it shows ancient Egyptians weren't afraid of underground architecture. They did it all the time. So when people wonder about chambers near the Sphinx, it's not an insane thought. It's just unproven in the giant secret library way. And here's something fascinating. The plateau still produces surprises. Even in modern times, scanning has revealed unexpected voids in other monuments. So the general idea there may be unknown spaces is not fantasy. The fantasy is when we jump from unknown space straight to Atlantis archive. That jump is emotional, not evidential. And that's okay, stories are allowed to be emotional, but we should always label them properly. Facts are facts, stories are stories, and forbidden archaeology lives in that exciting middle where people keep mixing the two. A gentle, funny moment. What would you even do if you found the Hall of Records? Let's say you're a researcher. You drill, you break through into a chamber. Your camera drops down and the dust clears, and you see shelves, stacks, ancient tablets, the complete history of humanity. Okay, now what? Do you read it? In what language? Do you carry it out? How do you preserve it? How do you stop people from stealing it? How do you stop the internet from turning it into memes in 12 minutes? You see what I mean? Part of the Hall of Records fantasy is that it would be a clean, perfect reveal. But real archaeology is messy. Real discoveries come with preservation problems, contamination risks, politics, tourism pressure, media chaos. Though sometimes I laugh and think, maybe the earth is hiding things from us because we'd behave like kids in a candy store. We'd run in screaming, I found it, I found it, then immediately break it. So yeah, maybe the Sphinx is protecting the past from us, not the other way around. There's one more thing under the Sphinx people don't talk about enough. This is subtle, and it's not Atlantis, but it's powerful. The Sphinx sits inside an enclosure, like a carved-out space around it. And that enclosure itself tells a story, because the Sphinx wasn't placed there like a toy. It was carved out of the plateau, meaning the beneath isn't just under the statue, it's connected to how the whole area was cut and shaped. And sometimes what people interpret as mystery chambers could be tied to quarry cuts, construction phases, unfinished work, later repairs, natural fissures exposed by cutting. So the real forbidden question becomes, what stages of work happened here that we don't fully understand? Not what alien vault is hiding there, but what human decisions were made here? And if we don't have perfect records of those decisions, then the ground itself becomes the record, a living puzzle, a literal hidden history. Now let's pay this off. Beneath the Sphinx might be less about objects and more about time. Here's the quiet truth. People want chambers under the Sphinx because they want the Sphinx to talk. They want it to tell us something, a message, a truth, a secret. But the Sphinx doesn't speak in words. It speaks in time. It speaks in survival. It speaks in the fact that it lasted through sand burial, erosion, looters, restorations, politics, tourism, pollution, modern arguments. So what's covered beneath it? Yes, limestone. Yes, small shafts. Yes, water and fissures. But also a battle between what we know and what we want to know. And that battle is as old as humans. A soft, slow documentary for sleep segment. Imagine the night shift on the plateau. Let's drift into a calming visual. Imagine you're the night guard on the Giza Plateau. The tourists are gone, the heat has faded, the air is cooler. You hear sand moving like a whisper. You walk near the Sphinx, the face is dim in the moonlight, and you stop. Because no matter how many times you've seen it, it still feels like it's watching you. And you remember all the stories you've heard. Tunnels in the head, shafts behind the stele, a passage near the tail, secret chambers under the paws, lost civilizations, ancient technology, hidden history. And in that moment, you realize something. Even if none of the wild stuff is true, the Sphinx still wins because it made you feel wonder. It made you feel small in a good way, like the world is bigger than your problems. And that's the real reason people love ancient mysteries. They're relaxing, they're humbling, they're like a deep breath for your brain. That's why people search. Sleep stories, bedtime history, boring history for sleep, relaxing history, sleep stories, history documentary, ancient Egypt documentary, pyramids of Giza, pyramids of Egypt, ancient history, hidden history, lost civilizations. Because the mind wants to rest in something vast, and the Sphinx is vast, without moving an inch. But wait, what about those recent bold claims people keep mentioning? Now, I'm going to handle this carefully because this is where a lot of viewers get overly excited and start turning their brains into fireworks. You'll hear claims pop up now and then like, someone found a massive vertical shaft under the Sphinx. These kinds of claims spread fast because they're clickable and because they fit the Hall of Records fantasy perfectly. But most of the time, they're either unverified, exaggerated, misunderstood, not supported by consensus evidence, and experts often push back saying things like, current methods have limitations and deep claims aren't validated. So what do we do with that? We do the calm thing. We don't panic. We don't worship it. We don't dismiss it like a cartoon either. We file it as interesting claim needs proof. That's the healthiest way to approach forbidden archaeology. Curious but not gullible. Open but not naive. Another gentle hook. If you're still awake, here's the next emotional layer. In the next section, we're going to answer why the Sphinx became a magnet for lost civilization stories specifically, and not, say, a random statue somewhere else. How the pyramids of Giza amplify every mystery around them. What the Sphinx represents spiritually, and why that matters for the Hall of Records myth. A final suspense arc that ends with a strong call to action without leaving you anxious. So stay with me. And if this is the kind of relaxing documentary vibe you like, please subscribe. Because the next episode can go even deeper into the pyramids of Egypt, the underground tomb networks, and the most famous hidden rooms people argue about. Why this statue attracts lost civilization myths. Let's be real. There are other ancient statues, there are other impressive ruins, but the Sphinx has a special power. Because it looks like a riddle, half lion, half human. It's literally a puzzle carved into rock. So it naturally attracts puzzle stories. And spiritually, across cultures, Sphinx-like creatures often represent guardianship, protection, mystery, sacred thresholds, powerful knowledge. So when people ask, what does the Sphinx represent spiritually? A simple answer is, it represents protection and power, like a gatekeeper. And gatekeepers always guard something. That's how stories work. Even if the Sphinx is just a statue in literal terms, symbolically it feels like it's guarding knowledge. And that symbolic feeling is what fuels the Hall of Records myth. Not the drills, not the scans, the feeling, the vibe, the psychological pull. The pyramids effect, why the whole plateau feels like ancient technology. Now add the pyramids. The pyramids of Giza are so large, so precise, so iconic, that people already treat them like a miracle. So when you place the Sphinx near them, the mystery multiplies. Because your brain assumes if they built that, they could hide anything. And that's where ancient technology gets thrown around. Some people mean it responsibly. Ingenious engineering, clever workforce organization, smart surveying and measuring, effective stone transport methods. Other people mean it wildly. Lost machines, Atlantean devices, impossible tools, advanced science erased by time. And the truth? The ancient world was brilliant. Whether or not it was advanced like a sci-fi movie is the debate, but it was advanced in the ways that matter. Planning, labor systems, geometry, stonework, patience. And if you don't believe patience is a technology, try building anything hard without it. Why does this story comfort people even when it's unresolved? Let me tell you the secret reason these sleep stories work. It's not the facts alone, it's the emotional feeling of unresolved mystery, because modern life is too resolved. Everything is scheduled, everything is notified, everything is tracked, everything has an answer. But the Sphinx? It doesn't answer you. It lets you wonder. And that wonder feels like freedom. That's why even boring history for sleep becomes comforting. Because the boredom is safe, the mystery is gentle, the stakes are low, and the imagination can stretch out. So whether you believe in the Hall of Records or not, the Sphinx gives you something real, a place to rest your mind inside a question. One last question before we close this segment. Let's bring it back to the main question again, because we're building toward a bigger ending later. What's covered beneath the Sphinx? Mainstream view? Limestone, fissures and cavities, small shafts/tunnels from different periods. Groundwater, no confirmed giant hidden library, forbidden archaeology view, possible undiscovered chambers, symbolic guardian of secret knowledge, Hall of Records legend tied to lost civilizations, suspicion that not everything is being revealed, and the honest middle view, mysteries exist but big claims need big proof. Now here's the cliffhanger that leads perfectly into the next 5,000 words. When you ask again, what if the biggest beneath the Sphinx secret isn't under the Sphinx at all? What if it's under the story we tell about it? What if the real hidden history isn't buried in limestone, but buried in the way humans love myths when the truth feels too plain? We're going to crack that open next. So if you're enjoying this relaxing ancient Egypt documentary style, please subscribe deeper into the story. Because here's the weird truth about the Great Sphinx of Giza. The ground under it might be solid rock, but the ground under the idea of it? That's soft, that's shifting, that's sand, and sand is where myths grow best. So tonight, relaxing slow like a documentary for sleep, we're going to explore the hidden layer most people skip. Why do we want the Sphinx to be hiding something? And what happens when the boring history answer is right? But the forbidden archaeology story still feels more satisfying. Because if you understand that, you'll understand why the Hall of Records legend never dies. Even when drills hit water, even when tunnels dead end, even when experts say, that's geology, you'll get it. And once you get it, the Sphinx becomes even more powerful. Not less, more. All right, let's pick up from that cliffhanger. What if the biggest secret beneath the Sphinx isn't under the Sphinx at all, but under the story we tell about it? Okay, here's the first uncomfortable thing we have to admit. Humans love hidden history. We love it more than normal history. Normal history says people built a thing, it took work, they used tools, it lasted. Hidden history says people built a thing and there's a secret door, and behind it is knowledge that changes everything. One is true most of the time, the other is more exciting. And excitement is a powerful drug. That's why forbidden archaeology is so addictive. It doesn't just offer facts, it offers a feeling, a thrill, a promise. It says, you're not just learning ancient history, you're uncovering something they don't want you to know. And if you've ever felt ignored in your life, if you've ever felt like the world has secrets and you're not invited, that kind of story feels like revenge, like justice, like finally you're in on something. So the Hall of Records myth doesn't only live underground, it lives in that human emotion, that hunger, that I want there to be more feeling. Now, before anyone gets offended, let's be clear. This doesn't mean everyone who loves these theories is foolish. Not at all. It means the theories work because they match how humans are built. Our brains are story machines. We don't just want information. We want meaning. We want drama. We want payoff. And the Sphinx? The Sphinx is built like a payoff. A giant silent guardian, staring through time, parked beside the pyramids of Egypt, like it's keeping a promise. Tell me you don't feel it. Tell me you don't look at that face and think, okay, what do you know? Exactly. So let's talk about the real beneath, not the rock, the psychology. The Sphinx is a riddle, and humans can't leave riddles alone. The Sphinx doesn't look like a normal statue. It looks like a question, a lion body, power, a human head, mind, a hybrid, mystery. Even if you're not spiritual, you can feel the symbolism. It screams guardian, and guardians always guard something, a gate, a treasure, a secret, a threshold. That's why spiritually people often associate Sphinx-like figures with protection, sacred knowledge, and power. Not because it's proven by lab tests, but because it fits the symbol. And symbols don't need drills to work. They work in your head. So when someone says, what does the Sphinx represent spiritually? A soft answer is, it represents protection, authority, and mystery, like a watchdog for sacred places. And that spiritual vibe naturally creates one huge thought. If it guards, there must be something behind it. Now watch how that thought expands. At first it's innocent. Maybe it guards a tomb, maybe it guards a temple. Then, as centuries pass and the Sphinx keeps getting buried, now it starts to guard the imagination itself. People begin to think it guards lost civilizations, ancient technology, hidden history, forbidden knowledge, the real story of humanity. And that's how you end up with a modern myth like the Hall of Records. Not because someone found a sign that says library, but because the human brain can't accept a guardian without a treasure. The pyramids effect, why the whole plateau feels like a secret even when it isn't. Now add the pyramids of Giza into the mix. Let's be honest, the pyramids already feel unreal. Even if you know the mainstream explanation, teams of workers, planning, ramps, tools, logistics, your eyes still go, no way. So when you stand near them, your brain enters a special mode. I call it ancient technology mode. It's the part of your mind that assumes everything here has hidden layers, because the visible layers are already insane. It's like walking into a rich person's house. Even if you don't see a safe, you assume there's a safe. Even if you don't see the basement, you assume there's a basement. Because the vibe says, this place has compartments. That's what the Giza Plateau vibe does. And that's why sleep stories about ancient Egypt are so satisfying, because the location itself feels like a locked box. So when people say there must be tunnels linking everything, it's not crazy. It's emotionally logical. It fits the mood. But emotional logic isn't evidence. It's atmosphere. And atmosphere is what great bedtime stories are made of. A calm, hidden history lesson. Myths don't need to be true to be powerful. Here's something that might surprise you. Even if the Hall of Records is not real, the myth still matters, because myths reveal what people want, and what people want tells you something about the time they live in. For example, in the 1900s, especially the late 1900s, the world became obsessed with lost knowledge. Ancient aliens, hidden chambers, secret codes. Why? Because modern life got complicated. And when life gets complicated, people crave a simple answer, a single room that explains everything, a book of truth. That's what the Hall of Records represents emotionally, a clean solution to the mess of history. History is messy. People don't like messy, so we create neat stories. But actual ancient history is more like a closet. You open it and things fall on your head. So the forbidden story isn't just Atlantis under the Sphinx. It's, I wish history was neat. Now let's bring this back to the real tunnels, because here's the hidden payoff. The fact that the tunnels are dead ends is actually more haunting. Think about it. A tunnel that leads to treasure feels like a movie, but a tunnel that leads nowhere, that feels like a ghost story. It feels like someone tried and failed and left a scar in the rock. It makes you picture a person in ancient times or medieval times or modern times, digging down with sweat in their eyes thinking, just a little more. It has to be here. And then, nothing. Only rock. Only water. Only silence. That's sad. That's human. That's haunting. And it tells you something important. People believed the Sphinx had secrets long before radar existed, long before documentaries existed, long before YouTube existed. So the obsession isn't new. The obsession is ancient. The Sphinx didn't just inspire forbidden archaeology, it inspired hope. And hope makes people dig. So when you hear there are shafts and tunnels, don't just think disappointment. Think how many people across time risked everything because they couldn't stop wondering. That's deep. That's powerful. That's why this topic works as relaxing history and sleep stories. Because it's not just about stone, it's about the human heart. The Hall of Records as a modern bedtime myth. Let's treat the Hall of Records story like the kind of bedtime story it really is. Not insulting, just honest. It has all the pieces of a perfect modern myth. 1. A mysterious monument. 2. A prophecy. 3. A precise location. 4. A technological scan that seems to match. 5. A delay in access. 6. A powerful authority figure saying no. 7. A belief that the truth is being withheld. That's a recipe, not for scholarship, for obsession. And if you want to see how myths stay alive, look at point number 6. Because nothing keeps a rumor alive like someone saying, you can't go there. It's like telling a child, don't touch that cookie. Now the cookie becomes the most delicious cookie on earth. So when authorities restrict drilling or access, even for good reasons like preservation, some people automatically interpret it as secrecy, and the forbidden story grows again. Like sand piling up in the wind, the desert is the perfect stage for this kind of story. Now let's talk about the setting itself. Deserts are quiet, empty, wide, and silence makes everything feel older. A forest can hide things, but it's noisy. A city can hide things, but it's crowded. A desert hides things with stillness. So when you tell a story about hidden history in Egypt, it feels believable emotionally, because the landscape supports the myth. You can imagine lost civilizations out there. You can imagine ancient technology swallowed by dunes. You can imagine temples buried under sand like sleeping animals. And here's the truth. Many sites in Egypt really were buried and later uncovered. So the desert has earned its reputation. It really does keep secrets. So people think, if it hid temples, it can hide a library. And that thought becomes the bridge between archaeology and fantasy. A gentle contrarian point. What if lost civilizations is the wrong way to honor ancient Egypt? Okay, this is important, because some of the lost civilization talk accidentally insults the people who actually built these monuments. When people say, the Egyptians couldn't have done it, so it must be Atlantis, they might not mean disrespect. But it can sound like, we don't believe your ancestors were capable. So here's a contrarian perspective that's worth sitting with. What if the real hidden history is that ancient Egyptians were more brilliant than we give them credit for? What if the ancient technology was there? Surveying skill, organization, stone knowledge, labor systems, engineering creativity. Patience, what if the secret isn't that they had lasers, but that they had something modern people lack? Time, focus, long-term thinking, and communities willing to build for eternity. That's an ancient technology too. A social technology, a mental technology. And it's so rare today that it feels supernatural. So maybe we don't need Atlantis to feel wonder. We just need respect. Now, that said, the plateau still has surprises, and that keeps the forbidden door open a crack. Even if you lean mainstream, you can't deny this. We don't know everything. The Giza area has had discoveries in modern times that surprise people. So the idea that there might still be unknown cavities is not crazy. What's unproven is the huge leap. Unknown cavity equals Hall of Records. But unknown cavity by itself possible. That's why the story stays alive. Because the truth has room for mystery. and mystery has room for myth. Let's make it super simple. 3 beneath the Sphinx possibilities that don't require Atlantis. If you want a grounded way to wonder, here you go. If there is anything more under or near the Sphinx than we've already confirmed, it could be 1. Natural voids in limestone, common. 2. Construction-related cuts, unfinished work, quarry features, repair shafts. 3. Later intrusions, treasure hunter tunnels, small ritual spaces, exploratory holes from different eras. Those 3 explain almost everything without needing lost civilizations. But, and here's the part that keeps it spicy, those 3 still leave room for something genuinely surprising. Not Atlantean flying machine, but maybe. A forgotten small chamber, a buried offering space, a worker-related feature, an unknown shaft, a sealed cut. Small surprises are still surprises. Now let me give you a slow suspense scene, a calm little bedtime history dramatization. Scene scenario, the man with the shovel, 900 years ago. Imagine a man in the medieval period. Not a scientist, not a TV host, just a man. He's heard stories about the Sphinx. He's heard that kings of old buried valuables. He's heard that the giant lion is a guardian. He has one life, he's poor, he's desperate. So he comes at night with a shovel, maybe a friend, maybe a torch. The sand is cool, the stars are sharp, and the Sphinx's face is faint in the dark. He starts digging at a place he thinks makes sense, near the paws, near the body. He digs, he hits limestone. He keeps digging, he finds a crack, he widens it. His heart pounds, because in his mind, this is the moment the world changes. His hands for him, he scrapes, he squeezes into a narrow opening, and inside, the air is stale, the stone is wet. He pushes forward, a few steps, a few minutes, and then it stops. A dead end. No chamber, no treasure, no tablets, just a wall of rock and the slow drip of water. Now here's the payoff. He still doesn't leave empty-handed because he leaves with a story. He goes back to his village and says, I found an opening, the Sphinx has a tunnel. And that sentence spreads for generations. And each generation adds flavor, adds drama, adds a secret room just a bit further, adds a sealed door that I almost opened, adds a curse that made me run. That's how hidden history grows. Not from proof, from storytelling, from human disappointment mixed with hope. And if you're listening to this to sleep, that kind of story is soothing in a strange way, because it's repetitive, human, familiar. Why forbidden archaeology feels like comfort. Here's another emotional truth. Forbidden archaeology gives people a sense of control, because real history is hard. It takes patience. It takes reading. It takes admitting we don't know. But forbidden stories offer clean certainty. This is what happened. Even if it's wrong, certainty feels good. It's like a warm drink. So when someone says, the Hall of Records is real and it's under the right paw, that's comforting to some people. It's simple. It's direct. It's a map. And maps calm the mind. That's why these stories work as bedtime history. Because bedtime is when the brain wants a clear thread to follow. A path, a tunnel, even if the tunnel is imaginary. The biggest twist, the Sphinx might be the Hall of Records. Now let me offer you a poetic idea, not a claim, not this is fact, just a thought that hits emotionally. What if the Sphinx is the Hall of Records? Not because it contains books, but because it contains memory. Think about it. It's a record of the people who carved it, the beliefs that shaped it, the kings who restored it, the travelers who feared it, the treasure hunters who damaged it, the modern world that debates it. The Sphinx doesn't store history on tablets. It stores history in scars, in weathering, in restorations, in missing stone, in patched blocks, in the way it survived. So in a way, it's already the library. A library you read with geology, archaeology, and patience. And that's a calmer, more grounded kind of wonder. A wonder that doesn't need Atlantis, but still feels magical. The sleep stories rhythm, questions that relax you instead of stressing you. Let me ask you softly, Have you ever noticed how some mysteries feel stressful, but other mysteries feel soothing? The Sphinx mystery is soothing because it's slow. It's thousands of years slow, no rush, no deadline, no urgent news alert, just a timeless question. So here are a few gentle questions you can let your mind float on. If you were an ancient Egyptian worker, what would you feel carving something meant to last forever? If you were a prince sleeping near the Sphinx, what would you dream? If you were a treasure hunter, what would you hope to find? If you were a modern scientist, what would frustrate you the most? Myths or the fact that nature can mimic rooms on scans? If the Sphinx could speak, would it tell the truth or would it tell a story? Those questions are like rocking a baby to sleep. They don't demand an answer, they just carry you. A little humor break, because yes, we need it. Let's be real. If there was a hall of records, the internet would ruin it so fast. Day 1, breaking, Hall of Records discovered. Day 2, top 10 things Atlantis didn't want you to know. Day 3, people arguing if the tablets are real or CGI. Day 4, someone selling authentic Hall of Records dust in little jars. Day 5, a new TikTok dance called the Sphinx Shuffle. So maybe it's better that the Sphinx keeps quiet. Maybe it's doing us a favor. There's one place beneath the Sphinx people forget to look, and it's right in front of them. Okay, here's a sneaky twist. When people ask, what's under the Sphinx, they imagine digging straight down under the body. But the real beneath question isn't always straight down. Sometimes it's around. The Sphinx sits in a carved enclosure with surrounding features, temples, causeways, quarry cuts. So sometimes a void detected near the Sphinx might not be under the statue like a basement. It might be under the floor of the enclosure, under nearby structures, inside a cut section of rock, near old repair areas. Meaning the story is not a simple one chamber under one paw. It's a complex landscape. That's why people keep getting confused. Because the Sphinx doesn't sit on a simple flat slab like a statue in a park. It sits inside a living puzzle. So here's the cliffhanger for the next stretch. What if the real secret isn't a library, but a missing chapter in how the whole Sphinx complex was built and used? Not Atlantis, not aliens, just a missing chapter. A human chapter. A chapter the sand hid. A chapter we might still find. And that's exciting in a grounded way. You don't need to believe to enjoy this. I want you to feel free here. You don't have to pick a team. You don't have to fight in the comments like it's a boxing match. You can simply enjoy the ancient mystery. You can love the relaxing documentary vibe. You can let the Sphinx be what it's always been, a quiet invitation to wonder. That's what good ancient Egypt documentary storytelling does. It doesn't force belief. It invites imagination while respecting facts. And that's what we're doing. Now, if you're still listening, your eyes probably feel heavy. Good. That's the point. But before we fade out of this segment, let's anchor the key words naturally so the story stays searchable for the people who need it. Because yes, this is educational, but it's also built for the real world. So we're talking about pyramids of Giza, pyramids of Egypt, and Egypt itself. We're exploring ancient mysteries, hidden history, and lost civilizations themes in a calm way. We're balancing forbidden archaeology stories with the mainstream view of ancient history. We're keeping it as relaxing history, a history documentary you can fall asleep to, a documentary for sleep, a bedtime history story. Even a little boring history for sleep, but the good kind of boring, the kind that makes your brain go quiet. Now let me close this 5,000-word section with a strong, simple setup that leads perfectly into the next one. So tonight we've uncovered something important, not a chamber, not a library, but the real engine of the mystery, the reason this story keeps living. It's not just tunnels, it's not just radar, it's not just water, it's the human need for meaning. The human need to believe that beneath the surface of life, there's a hidden room, a hidden truth, a hidden history. And the Sphinx, more than any monument on Earth, looks like it was built to guard that feeling. Now here's the cliffhanger. In the next part, we're going to do a slow walk through the Sphinx's neighborhood. And I'm going to show you why some of the most interesting mysteries might not be under its paws, but in the way the entire Giza landscape fits together like a coded message. And once you see that pattern, you'll understand why people keep whispering about ancient technology, lost civilizations, and forbidden archaeology, even when the rock says nothing. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe. Look straight down under the Sphinx, like we're digging for buried treasure, but around it, like we're reading a crime scene. Because the Great Sphinx of Giza doesn't live alone. It sits inside a whole neighborhood of stone. And when you stop staring at only the face and start looking at the layout, you realize something spooky in the best way. The Sphinx isn't just guarding the pyramids. It's guarding a plan, a system, a story written in architecture. And if there's any hidden history here, any real grounded ancient mystery, it might be inside that plan. So get comfy. This is the part that feels like a relaxing documentary, a slow ancient Egypt documentary tour, like bedtime history, but with just enough suspense to keep your brain gently awake. The Sphinx's neighborhood. Why the ground around it matters more than the ground under it. Picture the Giza Plateau, like a giant stage. The pyramids of Egypt are the main actors, huge, loud, impossible to ignore. But the Sphinx is the narrator. It sits low, closer to the ground, staring out like it's watching the audience. Now here's the key. The Sphinx is connected to temples and pathways nearby, structures that feel like they were designed to work together. And once you see that, you stop asking only, what's under the Sphinx? And you start asking, what was the Sphinx for? Because function is the real forbidden question. If you know the function, you understand the people. And if you understand the people, you stop needing Atlantis. Not because Atlantis is stupid, but because the real story becomes strong enough on its own. So let's meet the neighbors. Neighbor number 1, the Sphinx Temple. Right in front of the Sphinx, there's a temple area. It looks like a ruin now, but it's not random rubble. It was carefully built. Big limestone blocks, heavy architecture, a place that feels ceremonial. And temples aren't built for no reason. They're built for rituals, for offerings, for paws, for kings, for the idea of eternity. So when someone tells you the Sphinx is just a statue, you can politely smile and think, then why the temple? Because a statue that stands alone is one thing, but a statue paired with a temple? That's a religious and political statement. That's a system. That's a message now. If you're the kind of person who loves ancient mysteries, this is where the air gets interesting, because temples are where secrets happen. Not sci-fi secrets, human secrets, ritual secrets, power secrets, and that's already enough to light the imagination. Neighbor number 2, the Valley Temple and the Causeway vibe nearby. There's also what people call a Valley Temple, connected to the larger pyramid complex. And then there are those long stone paths, causeways, that link temples to pyramids like stone rivers. These causeways are important because they show movement, procession, a planned route, like a sacred walk. So now your brain starts seeing the plateau not as scattered monuments, but as a choreographed environment, a place built to guide bodies, eyes, and beliefs. If the plateau is a choreographed environment, then the Sphinx may be positioned for a reason, facing a certain direction, guarding a certain approach, watching a certain route, like a bouncer at the world's most exclusive club. And when you realize that, the Sphinx becomes less mystery beast and more political religious machine. And yes, that's still exciting. Because the best ancient technology isn't always metal. Sometimes it's design, sometimes it's planning, sometimes it's psychology. The mainstream storyline, a king, a complex, and a big stone guardian. Now, mainstream archaeology tends to place the Sphinx inside the pyramid complex of a specific king, often connected to Pharaoh Khafra. You'll also see it spelled Khafra. In this view, the Sphinx is part of his grand landscape, a guardian statue carved from the bedrock, a symbol of royal power, a divine protector. Now you might be thinking, okay, so where's the forbidden part? Here it is. Even if the mainstream dating is correct, the Sphinx is still weird, because it's carved in a way that it suggests multiple phases: weathering, repairs, restorations, different stone quality across the body. It's the kind of monument that's been in a relationship with time. And time is not gentle, so even if it's only 4,500 years old, it's still older than almost every human institution you can name. Older than modern countries, older than most religions in their current form, older than basically every building you have ever stepped inside. So the Sphinx becomes a test of humility, and that's why it keeps generating sleep stories and bedtime stories, because you can't look at it without feeling time, and time makes people spiritual, even the people who swear they aren't. Forbidden archaeology loves one sentence: that doesn't look like it should be possible. You'll hear people say it about the pyramids of Giza. You'll hear people say it about the Sphinx. That doesn't look possible. And that sentence is a doorway. It can lead to healthy curiosity, or it can lead to wild certainty. Healthy curiosity says, let's study their methods, let's respect their skill. Wild certainty says, it must be aliens or Atlantis. And here's the contrarian middle again. What if the real hidden history is that we underestimate what humans can do with organization, patience, generations of knowledge, strong motivation, like religion and kingship, and time, because modern life teaches us speed. Ancient life taught endurance. That's why a project that took decades doesn't scare them. It scares us. So we invent shortcuts. We invent lost civilizations. We invent ancient technology that sounds like sci-fi because it helps our ego. It saves us from admitting maybe they were just that good. The beneath question gets more interesting when you remember something. The Sphinx was carved out of a quarry. Let's slow down. This is important. The Sphinx isn't a statue made from stacked blocks like Lego. It was carved from the bedrock, meaning the area around it was cut away, like sculpting a figure from a mountain. So when people talk about underground chambers, you have to remember the act of carving created pits, cuts, trenches, and exposed layers. So the ground here is not untouched natural terrain. It's manipulated terrain. And manipulated terrain can create cavities, trenches, weak spots, cracks, exposed fissures, places that later look like mystery holes. Now imagine thousands of years of sand pressure, water movement, temperature changes, people digging, people restoring, people drilling. You can get voids. You can get anomalies on scans. You can get spaces that look man-made even if they aren't. This is why the story stays complicated. And complicated is delicious for sleep stories history, because your brain can wander without needing a final answer. The Sphinx enclosure, the room around the Sphinx, is already a kind of chamber. People obsess over chambers under because the paws, but the Sphinx already sits in a carved enclosure, almost like a giant stone bathtub. So a question that feels less flashy, but more real, is why is the enclosure shaped the way it is? Because if you're building a symbolic guardian, you can place it anywhere. But they carved it into this specific pocket, and if you stand in that enclosure, you feel something in. You feel like you are in a sunken sacred space, like you stepped into the mouth of time. So yes, maybe there's no Atlantean library, but the Sphinx's very environment is engineered to create atmosphere. And atmosphere is an ancient technology too, a psychological technology, an emotional technology, a spiritual technology. You don't need microchips to control attention. You just need stone and scale. Now, let's talk about the under the paw obsession again, because there's a reason it's always the paw. This part is funny in a dark way. People always choose the paw. Why? Because paws feel like hands. And hands hide things. If I tell you there's a secret in my body, you might guess my pocket. If I tell you there's a secret in the Sphinx, you guess the paw area, because it's the part that touches the earth. It's the part that feels like it could press a switch. It's the part that looks like it could be covering a trapdoor. So even before radar scans, the paw area was a natural focus for treasure hunters. Dig by the paws is basically ancient mystery common sense. And then when a modern prophecy says right paw, and a scan shows an anomaly near the right paw, The story fuses like glue, and once glued, it becomes almost impossible to separate, even if later drilling says natural void, because people don't remember the correction as strongly as they remember the headline. That's human nature too. The boring history for sleep truth. Most big ancient sites have a lot of small voids. This is the part nobody wants on a t-shirt, but it matters. Large ancient complexes sit on geologies that aren't perfect slabs. They have cracks, pockets, cavities, softer layers, harder layers, old water pathways. So finding anomalies under Giza is not automatically shocking. It's expected. The shock happens when we attach a story to it too fast. So the balanced view goes like this. Yes, voids exist. Yes, some are natural. Yes, some are human-made. No, voids alone do not prove lost civilizations. That's the clean educational line. Simple enough for a 10-year-old, but still respectful to the wonder. The biggest forbidden question: who gets to decide what counts as history? Okay, this is where the emotion lives. Because when people fight about the Hall of Records, they're not only fighting about rock, they're fighting about authority, about gatekeeping, about who controls the story of the past. Mainstream institutions say, evidence first. Forbidden archaeology fans often feel institutions hide things. And sometimes institutions have behaved badly historically. Colonial looting, secrecy, politics, pride. So distrust can grow. And when distrust grows, myths find fertile soil. So when someone says, they won't let us dig, therefore the Hall of Records exists, that's not logical evidence. But it is an emotional response to history itself, a response to feeling excluded. And that's why this topic is bigger than Egypt. It's about the human relationship with truth. That's deep. And if you're listening in bed, you can almost feel your brain softening. Wow, this isn't just about tunnels. Exactly. A slow, soothing mental picture. The plateau as a sleeping machine. Let's do relaxing documentary mode for a minute. Imagine you're floating above the pyramids of Giza like a quiet drone. No dramatic music, just wind. You see the Great Pyramid. You see the smaller pyramids nearby. You see causeways like long stone veins. You see temples aligned with the sun. And then you see the Sphinx, small from above, but powerful, a guardian at the edge of a ritual landscape. Now think of it like a machine. Not a metal machine, a belief machine. A machine that turns human mortality into something eternal. A machine that says, the king is not just a man, he is part of the cosmos. And the Sphinx fits inside that machine like a symbol, a face, a watcher, a protector. So if there's any secret under the Sphinx, it may be that the whole plateau was designed to shape human minds, to make people feel awe, fear, reverence, submission, hope. And that's a kind of technology so powerful it still works on you today. Even through a screen, even through a bedtime story. But let's not pretend there aren't still real unknowns, because that's where the suspense stays honest. Here's what we can say without turning it into fantasy. We do not have access to every centimeter of the plateau. We do not perfectly understand every phase of construction and reuse. We know the site has had repairs and modifications. We know the Sphinx has been restored multiple times. We know the underground geology can be complex. So yes, there can still be surprises. Not necessarily a Hall of Records, but surprises. And that keeps the door cracked open, just enough to let curiosity breathe. That's why this remains a top-tier ancient mystery subject. It's why people search. Pyramids of Egypt, Pyramids of Giza, Ancient Egypt documentary, hidden history, lost civilizations, forbidden archaeology, relaxing history, documentary for sleep, bedtime history, sleep stories history. Because this place is a question that hasn't finished echoing. If the Sphinx really had a secret library, it picked the worst possible neighborhood. Let's be honest, if you wanted to hide something forever, would you hide it in the most famous tourist site on Earth? That's like hiding your diary under the pillow of the loudest kid in class. The Giza Plateau is basically the Times Square of ancient monuments. People have been crawling all over it for centuries, so if something is truly hidden there, it would need to be sealed extremely well, protected by geology, or hidden in a way that looks natural. Which brings us back to the annoying truth. If there's a real hidden chamber, it might not look like a perfect room on radar. It might look like nothing. It might be masked by natural features. It might be in plain sight but misread. That's why scanning and interpretation matter. And that's why debates don't end. Let's talk about the spiritual Sphinx again, because it changes how people interpret everything. When people say the Sphinx represents power and protection, they're not just describing art. They're describing the feeling of a threshold, a sacred line between ordinary world and royal sacred world. So once that symbolism takes hold, every crack becomes meaningful. Every hole becomes an entrance. Every void becomes a vault. That's how spiritual meaning can hijack physical evidence. Not because spirituality is bad, but because it's strong. It paints the world with significance. And the human brain loves significance. So when someone asks, what's covered beneath the Sphinx? The spiritual mind hears, what sacred truth is being protected? While the scientific mind hears, what physical features exist under the monument? Same question, different worlds. And that's why you'll never fully solve this debate. Because it's not only about what's in the ground, it's about what's in the heart. The forbidden archaeology pattern, big discovery elsewhere, fuels big discovery here. Every time there's a new discovery in Egypt, anywhere, people immediately go, hey, so what about the Sphinx? If a void is found in a pyramid, the Hall of Records theory gets new oxygen. Because people think, if we found that, maybe we can find this. And that's not irrational, it's just hopeful. So the Sphinx becomes a magnet for every new headline. And headlines are like wind, they move sand, they reshape the story. So even when experts refute a claim, the myth still benefits from the attention. Because attention is food, and myths eat attention. A strong educational moment, how to tell good mystery from bad mystery. Let's make this simple and useful. If you're watching ancient history content, especially forbidden archaeology content, ask 3 questions. 1, what's the claim? Is it there are voids or Atlantis built the Sphinx? 2, what's the evidence? Is it scans, artifacts, inscriptions, excavations, or just someone said? 3, what would change their mind? Do they accept testing, drilling, peer review? Or do they say every refutation is a cover-up? Good mystery is open to being wrong. Bad mystery is allergic to evidence. Good mystery says, maybe. Bad mystery says, definitely, and anyone who disagrees is lying. And the best sleep stories, they live in maybe. They keep you curious without making you paranoid. That's what we're doing here. The Sphinx complex might be telling a story about the sun. Okay, soft suspense. This is where the plateau starts to feel like a coded poem. The Sphinx faces east, toward the sunrise. That matters, because ancient Egypt was obsessed with the sun. Sunrise equals rebirth, renewal, the daily victory of light. So a guardian facing the sunrise fits a spiritual narrative. It's like the Sphinx is watching resurrection happen every morning. Now connect that to temples and causeways and pyramids, which also align with cosmic ideas. Suddenly, the Sphinx isn't just guarding tombs, it's guarding a sunrise ritual story. A story about the king joining the eternal cycle. And that is deeply human, because when people fear death, they build stories that defeat it. The pyramids are stone versions of that hope, and the Sphinx is the face that watches it. So again, the secret may not be a room of tablets. It may be that the whole landscape is a message. You down, but you are not finished. That's powerful. That's emotional value. That's why this content calms people. Because it takes your small life and places it inside a long story. A bedtime history feeling. A relaxing history feeling. If the Sphinx complex is a message, what happens when people later dig random tunnels into it? Here's where it gets eerie again. Imagine you build a sacred landscape, And then centuries later, desperate people come and dig into it looking for treasure. Those later tunnels don't just disturb rock, they disturb meaning. They carve confusion into the site. They create openings that later generations misinterpret. So the question becomes, when we see a shaft today, is it original, later, modern, natural? This is why mainstream archaeology moves slowly. Because rushing creates false stories, and false stories live forever, just like sand. If you stay with me a little longer, the next part will give you a calm explanation of the three most talked about openings, again, but in the context of the complex so it makes more sense. The one reason natural void doesn't satisfy people, and how to talk about it without fighting. A bedtime smooth ending that lands the emotion and the mystery together. So if you like this sleep story style, please subscribe. I'm not saying it because it's trendy. I'm saying it because this channel is literally built for people like you. People who want ancient Egypt documentary energy without shouting. Reframing the openings, the three tunnels as footprints of human obsession. Let's revisit them quickly but differently, not as proof of secret chambers, as proof of human behavior. The head shaft, this represents curiosity, the urge to look inside a monument's mind. People see a head and think brain, even if it's stone. The rear shaft near the dream stele, this represents ritual proximity. When a sacred stele exists, people dig nearby, because sacred places attract both worship and greed. The rump tail passage, this represents desperation. Treasure hunters go where they think nobody will notice, and a back area feels hidden. That passage going down and stopping is like a sentence cut off mid-word. It's a human signature, a scar of hope. And here's the haunting payoff. Even if none of these lead to a hall of records, they still prove something deep. The Sphinx has been treated like a vault for a very long time. So the myth isn't random. It's a continuation of behavior. Why natural void doesn't satisfy people, and why that's okay. Here's the emotional truth. Natural void feels like a letdown because it has no meaning. It's like opening a mysterious box and finding air. No message, no story, no payoff. But nature doesn't exist to entertain us. Nature doesn't care about our suspense arcs. Humans do. So when people reject the natural explanation, sometimes they're not rejecting the science. They're rejecting the emptiness. They want the universe to be a storyteller. And in a way, the universe is, just not the way we want. The universe tells slow stories, rock stories, water stories, sand stories. And those stories are still beautiful, if you learn how to listen. So, what's covered beneath the Sphinx? Not just rock, not just tunnels, not just groundwater and fissures, but a layered human dream, a dream that says the past is hiding something meant for us, a dream that says knowledge can survive time, a dream that says there is a secret room where everything makes sense. And maybe that dream is the real Hall of Records, not a physical chamber, but a mental one, a place inside us that wakes up when we face ancient things. Now here's the final cliffhanger that sets up the next 5,000 words. Did you ask again? What if the biggest reason people think they're hiding something under the Sphinx is because of what happens when science meets television? Because the moment you put mystery on TV, it stops being a question. It becomes a performance, and performance changes everything. Next time we'll talk about how media shape the Hall of Records obsession, how anomalies become rooms in the public mind, and how to enjoy forbidden archaeology without getting tricked by it. If this story is relaxing you, if it's scratching that ancient mystery itch, please subscribe. This is the part where the Sphinx doesn't just sit in the sand. It sits inside your screen, because once mystery meets television, it stops being a quiet question, and it becomes a loud story, a story with music, a story with dramatic pauses, a story with coming up next. And that changes what people believe. Not because people are stupid, because humans are suggestible, especially when we're relaxed, especially when we're tired, especially when we're watching a documentary for sleep and the narrator's voice is smooth like warm tea. So tonight, we're going to explore something that's honestly one of the most important hidden history lessons of all, how media turns maybe into definitely, and how the Hall of Records myth became so powerful that even refutations couldn't kill it. This is forbidden archaeology, but from a smarter angle. Not Atlantis is real, more like, how did this idea get so sticky? Because once you understand that, you'll be able to watch any ancient mysteries documentary about the pyramids of Giza, pyramids of Egypt, or any other lost civilization story, and you'll enjoy it without being tricked by it, and that's a superpower. All right, let's step into the TV era. When science meets television, the moment anomaly becomes chamber. Here's how this usually goes. A scientist runs a scan, seismic survey, ground-penetrating radar, something that measures changes in density or vibrations. And the scientist says, there's an anomaly here. Now pause. That word, anomaly, is calm. It means something different. It does not automatically mean a secret room. It could mean a crack, a void, a change in rock layers, a natural cavity, a filled trench, groundwater pockets, rubble from ancient work, later digging. But television doesn't like could. Television likes is. So what does the producer do? They call it a mysterious chamber, a hidden room, a secret vault, a shocking discovery, and then they add music. Doom, doom, doom. Then they show a CGI animation of a perfect rectangle under the Sphinx, and your brain goes, oh wow, that's a room. Even if the scientist never said that, even if the data doesn't confirm that, even if the drilling later hits water and sand, because your brain remembers pictures, not footnotes. And that's the first media magic trick. Trick number one, turning fuzzy data into crisp shapes. Scanning data is often messy. It's not like looking at a photo, it's like interpreting shadows. But documentaries show you clean graphics, perfect lines, neat boxes, a chamber with straight edges. And once your brain sees that graphic, it locks in. It's like your mind writes it into permanent memory, chamber under the paw. So when later someone says, actually it might be natural, your brain resists. Because it doesn't want to delete the cool picture. That's human. And that's why the Hall of Records theory got so strong in the 1990s. Not just because of scans, but because of how scans were presented. The prophecy effect, why Edgar Cayce became the star of the story. Let's talk about Edgar Cayce again, softly, fairly. Cayce's claims about Atlantis and a Hall of Records under the Sphinx are not supported by archaeological proof. Mainstream archaeology does not accept them as evidence. Okay, that's the educational line. But here's the media line. A prophecy is an irresistible storyline because a prophecy creates structure. It gives the story a spine. It gives it a beginning, middle, and end. It gives it suspense. Will it be true? It gives it a villain, those who don't want it found. It gives it a hero, the seekers, and it gives it a map, near the right paw. That's why Cayce's name keeps showing up. Not because archaeologists needed him, because storytellers needed him. And once a prophecy enters a story, it doesn't matter how many times people say it's unproven. Prophecies are sticky. They live in the imagination. They turn history into a treasure hunt. And treasure hunts are basically bedtime stories for adults. So Cayce becomes the magical key that unlocks the mystery for viewers. And the Hall of Records becomes the prize. Now, let's be even more honest. The Hall of Records story is also a modern myth about hope. People don't just want gold. They want meaning. They want reassurance that human history has a purpose. And the Hall of Records promises a purpose. It says, there is knowledge hidden that will awaken mankind. That's emotionally powerful, especially in times when people feel lost. So even if you don't believe it's real, you can understand why people love it. It's a comforting myth, a hidden history bedtime story. The authority effect, why Zahi Hawass became the villain in some people's minds. Now let's talk about something sensitive but important. In many documentaries and online conversations, Zahi Hawass is often positioned as the guy saying no, the skeptic, the gatekeeper. Sometimes people even make him the villain of the Hall of Records story. But here's the calmer truth. In archaeology, especially at a site like Giza, saying no is part of the job. Because the site is fragile, because drilling can damage, because tourism, weather, and time already stress these monuments. So from a preservation point of view, skepticism is responsible. But media doesn't love responsible. Media loves conflict. So the story becomes, prophecy says yes. Scans look exciting. Authorities say no. Viewers think cover-up. And boom, conspiracy grows. Trick number 2, turning preservation into secrecy. Sometimes we can't drill here means we're protecting the monument. But audiences sometimes hear we're hiding something. Because the suspense story needs an obstacle, and the easiest obstacle is a person with authority. So the Hall of Records myth gains power not just from belief, but from friction. Resistance becomes proof. In the minds of believers, resistance is a confirmation. That's a powerful psychological trap, and it's why debates stay hot forever. The water twist. The moment drills hit water and the story changes shape. Now remember the drilling results we discussed earlier. In some cases, drilling into anomalies produced water and sand, suggesting natural voids, not carved chambers. To a skeptic, that feels like closure. To a believer, that feels like a new beginning. Because believers can say, of course it's flooded, that's why it's hidden. Or, they drilled the wrong spot. Or, they lied about what they found. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Once a mystery becomes part of someone's identity, they can't let it die, because letting it die would feel like losing a piece of themselves. So the Hall of Records story evolves. It becomes immune to disproof, and that's one sign a story has shifted from hypothesis to mythology. Not as an insult, just as a description. How to enjoy forbidden archaeology without being tricked by it. Let's make this super simple and useful. Bedtime history style. You can absolutely enjoy forbidden archaeology content. It's fun, it's suspenseful, it scratches that ancient mystery itch. But you can enjoy it the way you enjoy a scary movie, with awareness. So here are 3 gentle rules. Rule 1, separate what we know from what we imagine. There are tunnels, shafts equals no. There's a Hall of Records equals imagine. So far unproven. You can imagine all you want, but don't label it as confirmed history. Rule 2, watch out for clean CGI rooms. When you see perfect rectangles under monuments and documentaries, remind yourself that's a graphic, not a photo. Not a carved wall, a guess drawn neatly. Rule 3, ask what would count as proof. Proof is an accessible chamber with carved walls, inscriptions, artifacts in context, documented excavation. Proof is not. It looks symmetrical on a scan. A psychic said so. Someone on YouTube claims. Now, does this remove the wonder? No, it actually makes the wonder stronger because it keeps your mind honest. And honest wonder is deeper than fantasy wonder. The Sphinx mystery is the perfect bedtime story because it has 2 endings. Here's something beautiful. This story has 2 satisfying endings depending on what you want tonight. Ending 8, the mainstream ending. Beneath the Sphinx are natural cracks, small shafts, possible looter tunnels, and complicated limestone geology. The Sphinx is extraordinary without needing secret libraries. Ending B, the mythic ending. The Sphinx is a guardian of hidden knowledge. Even if the Hall of Records is unproven, the idea represents humanity's longing for lost wisdom. Both endings have value. One is physical truth, the other is emotional truth. And bedtime history is where emotional truth lives best. A relaxing camera drift moment. Imagine the first time radar saw the anomaly. Let's dramatize this softly, like a relaxing documentary. Picture a team in the desert. Machines set up. Wires and sensors, quiet voices. Heat waves over stone. They run measurements, they check readings, they print lines and graphs. And then someone points. Look, a change, a signal, an anomaly, a hollow, something that isn't like the surrounding bedrock. In that moment, nobody is thinking about Atlantis. They're thinking, that's interesting. But the human mind is fast, and the human imagination is faster. So even if the scientists stay calm, the story outside the site starts running. Newspapers, TV, documentaries. The idea spreads. Hidden chamber found beneath the Sphinx. Now the world is watching. Now pressure builds. Now every answer is political. Because it's not just science anymore. It's national heritage. Tourism, pride, preservation, and public hunger. So the mystery becomes heavy. This is how ancient mysteries become modern drama. And drama always makes people sleep lighter, because it adds emotion to the facts. The lost civilizations magnet, why Atlantis always shows up. Let's be honest, why at Atlantis? Why not the lost library of, I don't know, Nebraska? Because Atlantis is already a famous symbol. It represents advanced civilization, sudden collapse, lost knowledge, human pride and punishment, secrets swallowed by time. So Atlantis fits perfectly into the Sphinx vibe. Two icons of mystery meet and become one mega mystery. That's why the phrase lost civilization shows up so often in Sphinx content. It's not always because evidence points there. It's because the story wants a big legendary partner. Atlantis is basically the celebrity cameo. And once that celebrity cameo appears, the script gets bigger. The audience gets bigger. The myth gets stronger. The ancient technology trap, confusing impressive with impossible. Now let's talk about the ancient technology keyword because it's important. A lot of people use ancient technology in two different ways. Way one, healthy. Ancient technology equals ancient methods, tools, engineering skills, organization. This is real. This is educational. This is respectful. Way two, unhealthy. Ancient technology equals advanced machines we aren't allowed to know about. This one can turn into fantasy fast. Now, could ancient people have had techniques we don't fully understand? Yes, but that doesn't automatically mean lasers. Sometimes the secret is boring. Better stone knowledge, better teamwork, better surveying tricks. Trial and error over generations. Boring doesn't mean weak. Boring means human, and human is powerful. The Sphinx is a spiritual symbol. Why people feel it's watching, even when they know it's stone. Let's return to the spiritual angle gently. People often report the same feeling near the Sphinx, like it's watching, like it's alive, even if they know logically it isn't. Why? Because faces trigger something in us. A face is social. A face demands interpretation. A face makes you feel seen. And the Sphinx has the biggest face in the neighborhood. So spiritually, people attach meaning, protection, judgment, guardianship, sacred life, solar power. And once you attach those meanings, you can't help but think it guards a secret. That's why, though, what does the Sphinx represent spiritually? Question matters. Because it shows the myth isn't only about rock, it's about psychology. A bedtime smooth twist. What if the Hall of Records story is a modern dream stele story? This is one of my favorite ideas. Remember the dream stele story? A prince sleeps. The Sphinx speaks. A promise is made. Now look at the Hall of Records story. Modern people dream of a hidden library. The Sphinx calls to them through myths and scans. A promise is made. Humanity will awaken. Do you see it? The pattern repeats. Different era, same structure. The Sphinx becomes a canvas for human longing. And that honestly is poetic. It makes the Sphinx feel timeless. Like it doesn't just guard a plateau, it guards a part of the human mind. If you stay with me, the next stretch will answer. What mainstream archaeology says is the most likely reason those shafts exist. Why treasure hunting is a bigger part of Egyptian monument history than most people realize. The one hidden payoff that makes the Sphinx story emotionally satisfying even without secret chambers. And we'll end with a calm, strong call to action that doesn't feel salesy. So if you're enjoying this Sleep Stories vibe, please subscribe. Treasure hunting, the ancient habit that keeps rewriting the Sphinx story. Here's the blunt truth. For centuries, people have dug into Egyptian monuments looking for treasure. Sometimes locals, sometimes outsiders, sometimes rich collectors, sometimes desperate poor people. And treasure hunting leaves scars. It creates tunnels that don't belong to the original plan. It creates holes that later people mistake for ancient entrances. It creates mystery passages that are actually just human greed in stone form. So when mainstream researchers say, some tunnels may be later additions by treasure hunters, that's not an insult. That's a historical reality. And it actually makes the story more human, because it shows that the Sphinx wasn't just admired, it was targeted. People treated it like a vault. Not because they knew it had treasure, but because they hoped. And hope is a shovel. The likely mainstream explanation of the shafts, simplified. If we translate the mainstream view into simple bedtime language, the Sphinx area has small shafts and passages. Some were made during excavation/restoration work. Some may be older, exploratory attempts. Some were likely treasure hunter intrusions. The bedrock itself naturally contains cracks and cavities. None of these so far proves a large hidden chamber. That's the clean educational summary. Now let's add suspense without lying. Because suspense doesn't require fake facts, it just requires unanswered questions. The unanswered questions that are still fair to ask. Here are fair questions that don't require Atlantis, but keep the mystery alive. 1. Are all shafts fully mapped and documented in publicly accessible detail? 2. Could there be small sealed features that haven't been accessed due to preservation concerns? 3. Could some anomalies be misunderstood, either exaggerated by media or dismissed too quickly by skeptics? 4. How much did later digging and restoration alter what we see today? 5. What was the full ritual function of the Sphinx complex across different eras? Those questions are real. They're educational. They're not conspiracy. They're just curiosity with manners. And that's the sweet spot. That's the best place for Sleep Stories history. Even if there's no chamber, the Sphinx still gives you the feeling of a secret door. Let's land something gently. People think they want a hidden room, but what they really want is the feeling that the world is deeper than it looks. And the Sphinx gives that feeling even if it's just limestone underneath. Because the Sphinx itself is a secret door in your mind. It opens something. It opens wonder. It opens humility. It opens imagination. It makes you feel time. And when you feel time, your problems shrink. That's why people fall asleep to relaxing history documentaries. That's why people search boring history for sleep, because it calms the nervous system. It says, there is a bigger story than your stress. So whether you believe in lost civilizations or not, the Sphinx still works. There's one more reason the Hall of Records theory refuses to die. And it's not case. It's not radar. It's not even the Sphinx itself. It's the fact that we've learned again and again that ancient people did build hidden chambers. They did seal rooms. They did hide things. They did create spaces meant to be unopened. So the human mind thinks, if they hid rooms elsewhere, why not here? That's the final fuel. That's the final spark. And in the next part, we're going to explore that exact thought. Where do we know Egyptians hid chambers? What kinds of hidden spaces were common? And how that knowledge affects how we interpret the Sphinx underground story, and we'll tie it all together with a strong, satisfying ending. So if this relaxed you, if this gave you that ancient mystery comfort, please subscribe. You know what keeps the Hall of Records idea breathing? It's not just Edgar Cayce, it's not even the scans. It's something simpler, and honestly more reasonable. It's this. We've learned over and over that ancient Egyptians did hide things. They sealed rooms. They built spaces meant to stay closed. They created chambers that were never meant for casual visitors. They didn't just build monuments. They built secrets into stone. So the human mind naturally goes, if hidden chambers exist elsewhere, why not under the Sphinx? And tonight we're going to walk through that thought slowly. Not like a loud debate, more like a quiet bedtime walk through an ancient city. We're going to look at the kind of hidden spaces we know existed in ancient Egypt, and then we'll return to the Sphinx with fresher eyes. Because once you understand what hidden looked like back then, your brain stops jumping straight to Atlantis. You start thinking like a detective, a calm detective, a sleepy detective, the kind that whispers, instead of yelling, I knew it. All right, imagine you're in ancient Egypt. Not the Hollywood Egypt with glowing curses and mummies sprinting like athletes. Real Egypt. Hot days, cold nights, stone dust, work songs, the smell of the Nile in the air, and the desert waiting just beyond the green. And you're building a tomb. If you're building a tomb for an important person, what's your biggest problem? It's not the weight of the stones, it's not even time. It's thieves humans have always stolen. If you bury valuables, someone will try to dig them up. So ancient Egyptians had to think like this. How do we hide a room in plain sight? And that question, right there, is where the whole Sphinx obsession gets its electricity. Because if ancient Egyptians were experts at hiding chambers, then it's not crazy to wonder if something could be hidden near one of their most iconic monuments. And not Hall of Records confirmed, just hidden spaces were a thing. Now, let's gently explore what kinds of hidden spaces were common. You don't need complicated words, just the main ideas. The simple truth, Egypt was built on shafts, chambers, and sealed doors ancient Egypt is full of. Vertical shafts going down into rock, chambers cut into limestone, corridors leading to burial rooms, block passages, false doors, decorative or symbolic, sometimes confusing to outsiders, hidden niches, and in some cases, clever layouts meant to mislead thieves. Sometimes the tricks worked. Sometimes thieves still won, because thieves are patient too. But the point is, underground construction wasn't rare. It was normal. So when someone says, underground chambers are impossible, that's wrong. The question isn't, could they? The question is, did they hear? And that's where proof matters. But let's keep going, because the emotional heart of this story isn't proof. It's the shape of the past. It's realizing ancient people weren't just stacking rocks. They were designing secrets. Hidden space type number 1, the straight down shaft. This one is simple. Dig a hole straight down, then cut a chamber off to the side, then block it up, then cover the top. If someone doesn't know where to dig, it's hard to find. And even if they find the shaft, it can be dangerous. So this method shows up a lot in tombs. And here's why it matters for the Sphinx story. People claiming a massive vertical shaft under the Sphinx are basically describing a layout that does exist in Egypt elsewhere. So the idea is not alien, it's Egyptian. The issue is whether there's evidence at the Sphinx site for that specific claim. But you see how the story gets traction? It fits an existing pattern. Hidden space type number 2, the corridor and the sealed chamber. This is the classic. A hallway, a chamber at the end, a stone plug, a block passage, maybe multiple blocks, maybe rubble, maybe a false passage to distract you. This is the kind of hidden people imagine when they imagine pyramids, because it's cinematic. It's a candle-lit hallway into the underworld. Now, is that under the Sphinx? Not officially proven. But once your mind knows Egyptians built corridors and sealed rooms, you can't help but glance at the Sphinx and think, could there be one here too? Hidden space type number 3, the space you don't realize is a space. This is my favorite because it's the creepiest in a quiet way. Sometimes the hidden element isn't a big room, it's a niche, a pocket, a cavity behind a wall, a place that doesn't look important until you know what you're looking for. This is what makes scan anomalies so tricky, because an anomaly could be a natural void, a small niche, a filled crack, a man-made pocket, or something else entirely. So when people look at a scan and scream chamber, they're skipping steps. They're skipping the boring part, the careful part, the let's test it slowly part. But to be fair, the boring part doesn't go viral. And that's the curse of modern history content. The most accurate stories are sometimes the least flashy. Still, we can make accuracy relaxing. We can make it feel like a bedtime story. So let's keep going. Why hidden chambers elsewhere doesn't automatically mean hidden chamber here. This is a big lesson, and I'm going to say it in the simplest way possible. Just because your neighbor has a basement doesn't mean you have one. The pyramids of Egypt include hidden chambers because that's how tomb architecture worked. But the Sphinx is not a pyramid. It's not a typical tomb. It's a guardian monument carved from bedrock. So the most important question becomes, what was the Sphinx's purpose in the landscape? If it was mainly symbolic, guardian, royal power, solar association, then it might not need a hidden room. But if it had ritual function in a temple system, then small hidden features could exist, like niches, shafts for offerings, or later modifications. And if later people believed it had treasure, then later tunnels could appear. So the hidden chambers elsewhere argument makes the idea plausible, but it doesn't prove anything. It just keeps the door open, a crack, a whisper, and whispers are all the Sphinx needs to stay legendary. Now, let's do something relaxing but intense. Let's take a mental walk through the plateau at night again. Except this time, you're not just a tourist. You're someone who understands how Egyptians hid spaces, so your eyes catch different details. Night Walk, Part 2. The plateau looks different when you know the patterns. You're walking slowly. You can hear sand under your shoes. The pyramids of Giza loom like sleeping mountains, and the Sphinx sits lower, like a creature half awake. You stare at the paws. You don't see a trap door. You don't see a shiny entrance. But you remember. Most hidden entrances don't look like entrances. They look like stone. They look like nothing. And that thought makes you quiet, because suddenly you realize, even if something was hidden, it could be hidden well. And then you also remember the other truth. This site has been poked and studied for a long time. People have dug, mapped, restored, explored. So if there was a huge, easy-to-find chamber, we'd probably have strong evidence by now. So your mind finds the middle. Maybe there are small features. Maybe there are natural voids. Maybe there were later tunnels. Maybe there's no great library. But the question remains, because the Sphinx is built to create questions. That's its real power. Now let's handle the Hall of Records again, but in the gentlest, fairest way, because I know some viewers love the myth and some viewers hate it, but we can talk about it without fighting. The Hall of Records idea reframed as modern myth built on real ancient behavior. Instead of saying it's true or it's fake, let's say it's a story that feels believable because Egyptians did hide things. That's the key. Case's claim gave the myth a specific target, right paw. The scans gave the myth a scientific-looking shadow, anomaly. The Egyptian tradition of hidden spaces gave the myth plausibility. They hid chambers elsewhere. The media gave it drama, coming up next, and human psychology gave it fuel. I want there to be more. So the myth becomes a perfect storm, and perfect storms don't die easily, they just change shape. Now, here's the part that's going to sound slightly uncomfortable but important. Sometimes people prefer the Hall of Records because it feels kinder than reality. Reality says, humans lived. They fought, they died, kings ruled, workers labored, tombs were robbed, empires collapsed. It's messy. The Hall of Records myth says, there was a golden age, wisdom exists, the truth is preserved, we can be saved by knowledge. That's comforting. It's almost like a spiritual lullaby. And in a world where people feel tired, stressed, and spiritually hungry, that lullaby sells. That's why documentary for sleep channels that blend mystery and history are so popular. Because they don't just teach, they soothe, they give hope. And I'm not here to shame that. I'm just here to label it honestly. A hope story, a modern bedtime myth. Now let's bring it back down to earth, literally. Because under the Sphinx, one of the biggest non-myth issues is water. The groundwater problem, the quiet villain nobody sees on TV. This part doesn't get enough attention because it's not glamorous. But it matters. If there are voids or shafts around the Sphinx, groundwater can fill them. Water can weaken limestone. Water can hide features. Water can make exploration dangerous. Water can blur the line between natural and man-made cavities. So when someone drills and hits water and sand, that is not automatically nothing. It's information. It says the underground environment here is active, not in a sci-fi way, in a geological way. And geology is slow, but it wins. Now let's slow down the voice, because this is Sleep Stories history energy. Picture water under stone, silent, dark, not moving fast, just sitting there holding the past like a cold hand. That image alone is enough to keep the Sphinx eerie. You don't need Atlantean tablets. You just need a flooded void beneath an ancient guardian. That's already unsettling. Now, here comes a question people rarely ask, but it matters. If there was something hidden, would we even want to access it? It sounds crazy to say no, but think. The Sphinx is fragile. Restoration is ongoing. Tourism is constant. The environment is harsh. If you found a sealed chamber under or near it, opening it could damage the monument, destroy what's inside due to sudden air exposure, trigger moisture changes, cause collapse, create a rush of looting attempts, turn heritage into chaos. So the "why don't they just open it" argument is emotionally satisfying, but practically naive. Archaeology is not unboxing a new phone. It's surgery, and the patient is 4,500 years old. So a lot of no decisions are about protection, not secrecy. But again, the public doesn't love that answer. The public wants a reveal. And when the reveal doesn't come, suspicion grows. Now we're going to do a gentle pivot to something that will feel like pure value, educational value. This is where your viewers lean in, even with sleepy eyes. How you can personally tell likely natural void versus likely human-made space. When you hear a claim, you don't need to be a scientist to think clearly. Here are the simplest clues. Clue 1. Does anyone show physical access? If nobody has entered it, nobody can claim it's a chamber with certainty. They can say void, anomaly, space, cavity. But chamber implies human carving. That needs stronger proof. Clue 2. Are there tool marks, cut walls, or constructed features? Human-made chambers often have smoother cut surfaces, tool marks, straight intentional angles, blocked entrances, masonry. Natural voids often look irregular, random, rough. Not always, but often. Clue 3. Does the claim survive peer scrutiny? If a claim only lives on sensational videos and doesn't survive critical review, be cautious. Now, I know that word peer review can sound like boring school, so translate it as, do other knowledgeable people agree after checking? Not, do my followers agree? Actual checking. Now, I'll give you something powerful, a calm way to be contrarian without being reckless. The calm contrarian stance. I don't buy Atlantis, but I also don't buy we know everything. This is the best position for a sleep story channel. It's humble, it's curious, it's emotionally satisfying. It goes like this. I don't see strong evidence for a hall of records under the Sphinx. I do see strong evidence that the plateau has complex geology and a long history of human digging. I believe there could still be smaller unknown features, because history keeps surprising us. And I believe the Sphinx's greatest secret is the way it keeps waking up human wonder. That stance protects you from two traps. 1, believing everything. 2, dismissing everything. Now, let's give the audience a big, cozy suspense arc again. The 3 doors, bedtime arc, stone myth in you. Tonight, the Sphinx gives you 3 doors. Door 1 is stone. That's the mainstream archaeology door. It opens to facts, shafts, fissures, tunnels that stop, groundwater. Door 2 is myth. That's the forbidden archaeology door. It opens to stories, Atlantis, Hall of Records, prophecy, spiritual awakening, lost civilizations. Door 3 is you. This one is the real one. It opens to something personal. The way ancient mysteries calm you, humble you, and make life feel bigger. Most documentaries pick one door and lock the others. But the reason this story is perfect as a relaxing documentary for sleep is because you can gently walk through all three. No shouting, no fighting, just wonder. Now let's drop a mid-story hook again, but keep it natural. If you're still listening, you're in that sweet spot, eyes heavy, mind alive. So here's what's coming next in this continuation. We're going to revisit the Sphinx tunnels again, but this time as a timeline, who likely made what and why. We're going to explore the simplest possible what-if scenario that doesn't involve Atlantis, a small ritual feature that people misread as a secret library. And then we're going to build towards a strong ending that feels satisfying even without a grand reveal. And yes, if you like this style of sleep stories, bedtime history, and ancient Egypt documentary calm, please subscribe. All right, timeline time. A simple timeline of beneath the Sphinx activity. Think of the Sphinx underground story as layers of footprints. Layer 1, ancient construction and carving. The Sphinx is carved from bedrock. The enclosure is cut. Temples nearby are built. This is the original landscape phase. In this phase, any cuts in the rock could be construction-related, quarry-related, structural, ritual support features. Layer 2, ancient and later restoration attempts. The Sphinx gets buried in sand at times. People clear it, repair it, rebuild damaged parts. Maybe dig small exploratory holes to check stability. This can create shafts that are practical, not mystical. Layer 3, treasure hunting and opportunistic digging. Across many centuries, people search for valuables. They dig into monuments. They widen cracks. They create tunnels that often go nowhere. This phase creates the most mystery-looking features because it's driven by hope and rumor. Layer 4, modern exploration and documentation. Scientists map, Egyptologists document, restorers stabilize. Some scanning happens, some drilling tests happen. This phase creates the most mystery-sounding headlines because technology makes people think X-ray vision. So if you hear tunnel beneath the Sphinx, you should always ask, which layer are we talking about? Because a treasure hunter tunnel and an ancient ritual cut are not the same story. And confusing them is how myths grow. Now, let's do the simplest what-if scenario that stays grounded. The grounded what-if, a small ritual space, not a hall of records. If you want to keep the wonder without lying, here's the best what-if. What if some anomalies near the Sphinx are simply small spaces connected to ritual use? Not a massive library, not Atlantean tablets. Just a small cut area, a niche, a cavity used for offerings, a space for something symbolic, or even a practical feature related to construction or drainage. That would still be interesting, it would still be hidden history, and it would fit what we know about Egyptian religious landscapes. And it would explain why some voids might appear symmetrical-ish without being a grand secret chamber. It's the most reasonable middle mystery, and it's still satisfying because it gives the Sphinx a whisper without giving it a fantasy megaphone. Now let's go back to the Sphinx's face for a moment because we haven't fed the emotion in a while. The face that makes people dream. There's something about the Sphinx's face that does a weird thing to humans. It feels calm but not friendly. It feels old but not dead. It feels like it's holding a thought, and when people are tired, that feeling gets stronger. That's why the Sphinx is perfect for bedtime stories, because at night your mind is already drifting. You're already in that dream state, and the Sphinx is basically a dream statue, half buried through history, speaking in silence. So whether you believe the Hall of Records exists or not, you can understand why people want it to exist. Because if the Sphinx could give humanity a gift, what would it be? Not gold, not a weapon, not a flying machine, a story, a record, a meaning. That's what humans crave most. Now we build toward the ending arc, but we'll keep suspense alive. The one question you should ask anytime someone claims secret chamber under the Sphinx, here it is, and it's simple. How do you know it's man-made? That's it. Because space is not the same as chamber. A natural void can exist. A man-made chamber is a human act. So the burden of proof is the human signature. Tool marks, constructed elements, inscriptions, artifacts in place. Without that, the most honest word is anomaly, not Hall of Records. Now, I want to give you a tiny bit of drama, gentle drama, because you asked for suspense and cliffhangers. So let's imagine a realistic scenario. The realistic suspense scene, the camera goes down and nobody sees what they wanted. A small borehole is drilled, not huge, not destructive, a careful hole. A tiny camera is lowered. Everyone's watching the monitor. The screen shows darkness, then rock, then water, cloudy water, a slow swirl, a pocket, not a carved room with shelves, just a wet hollow in limestone. And in that moment, you can feel two emotions collide. Disappointment, because the fantasy dies, and awe, because you just looked into a space no human eyes have seen in a long time. That second emotion is the one people forget, because disappointment is loud, but awe is quiet. Awe is the feeling you get when you realize nature itself has hidden spaces, and ancient landscapes are full of them. So even natural void can still be mysterious if you let it. Now we'll start closing this chunk with a strong, emotionally satisfying landing, without pretending we solved it completely. The real conclusion, said like a friend talking in the dark, here's what I think the Sphinx teaches us. Whether you're team mainstream or team forbidden, it teaches us that human beings don't just live, we search, we wonder, we dig, we tell stories. And the Sphinx has been a mirror for that searching for thousands of years. Under it, there may be limestone cracks, water-worn cavities, small shafts, later tunnels from treasure hunters, and possibly as small unknown features that aren't dramatic enough for TV. But above it, right in your mind, there is always something, a question, a pull, a feeling that the past is deeper than it looks, and that feeling is real. It's not fake, it's one of the most human things about you. That's why you're here. That's why you asked for 10,000 more words. Because you're not only looking for chambers, you're looking for wonder. And wonder is a form of rest. Now let's give you a strong ending for this chunk and with a clear call to action. As you requested. Simple, direct, not cheesy. If you enjoyed this, if you like sleep stories, bedtime history, relaxing history, and calm deep dives into ancient mysteries, hidden history, lost civilizations, and the pyramids of Giza, please subscribe. It tells the algorithm, yes, more of this. And it helps this channel keep making ancient Egypt documentary-style stories you can fall asleep to. And before you close your eyes, I'll leave you with one last question. Quiet, but sharp. If the Sphinx had a secret, would it be a room under his paw? Or would it be the way it can still make modern humans feel like children again? Small, curious, awed, safe enough to sleep. Because now we're at the part where the story does something sneaky. It stops being only about the Sphinx, and it becomes about how Egypt hides things in general. Because the more you learn about the way ancient Egypt loved sealed spaces, the more your mind starts to see the Sphinx as a suspect again. Not guilty, not innocent, just worth watching. So tonight, we're going to do three things, slowly. 1. We'll visit a few hidden chamber ideas from Egypt that are real patterns so you understand why the Hall of Records story feels believable. 2. We'll come back to the Sphinx and ask a calmer, smarter question than Atlantis or not. 3. We'll end with a clean emotional payoff that still leaves you relaxed. This is Sleep Stories history, not courtroom drama, not a shouting match, just a gentle investigation. All right. Why Egypt is the perfect home for hidden history stories. Because Egypt actually does hide history, not because of conspiracies, because of sand, because of rock, because of tomb culture, because of Hayim. Egypt is like a place that constantly says, you didn't see that. And then 200 years later says, okay, now you can see it. So when people obsess over lost civilizations and hidden history here, it's not random. Egypt trained the human imagination for this. Think about it. Entire temples were swallowed in sand for long periods. Tombs were sealed, then found. Chambers were blocked, then reopened. Monuments were forgotten, then rediscovered. So the public learns a pattern. Big things can be hidden for a long time. And once you believe that pattern, you start applying it everywhere, including the Sphinx. Now here's the key educational point. Not everything hidden is mystical. A lot of it is practical. Practical doesn't mean boring. It means human. And humans are the best mystery of all. The hidden chambers are real pattern. Explain like, you're 10. Okay, imagine you have a treasure box. You don't want your little brother to steal it. So you do 3 things. 1, you hide it. 2, you lock it. 3, you make the hiding place look normal. That's basically ancient tomb design. Not always perfect, but that's the idea. So ancient Egypt becomes a country full of locked treasure boxes. And when you grow up watching documentaries, your brain says, if ancient Egyptians hid things in tombs, maybe they hid things under monuments too. That thought is the bridge. It's the bridge between mainstream archaeology and forbidden archaeology. And once you cross that bridge, the Sphinx looks different. Now let's talk about the Sphinx again, but with a smarter flashlight. The smarter question isn't, is there a hall of records? The smarter question is, if there's anything human-made below or near the Sphinx, what would it most likely be? Because that question doesn't demand Atlantis. It doesn't demand a psychic prophecy. It doesn't demand a grand library. It simply asks, what kind of thing would make sense here? And that's where you start thinking like an archaeologist, even if you're half asleep. So what would make sense? Here are the most grounded possibilities, said in simple language. Small shafts related to construction checks, small cut spaces for ritual use near temples, later treasure hunter tunnels, or nothing human-made at all, just natural rock features. Even those small possibilities can be interesting, because small doesn't mean meaningless. A tiny niche can tell a huge story. A single carved groove can reveal a whole ritual practice. A blocked crack can reveal that someone tried to go deeper and stopped. So the mystery can live in the small details. Not only in a Hollywood chamber. Now, let's do something relaxing and dramatic at the same time. Let's step into the shoes of 2 different people, a believer and a skeptic, and we'll let them talk quietly without fighting. The believer's quiet argument. The believer stands near the Sphinx and says, look, we keep finding surprises in Egypt. We keep finding sealed spaces. We keep realizing we don't know everything. So why should I accept that there's nothing else here? And that argument sounds reasonable emotionally, because it's basically saying, I don't want to close my mind. That's fair. The skeptic's quiet argument. The skeptic stands near the Sphinx and says, yes, Egypt has surprises, but big claims require big evidence. Scans can be misunderstood. Media can exaggerate. And this site has been studied a lot. That argument is reasonable too, because it's basically saying, I don't want to lie to myself. Also fair. So the healthiest place to be is the middle. Curious but careful. Open but grounded. That's the perfect mood for a relaxing documentary, because the middle is calm. The middle is where your nervous system relaxes. And we're building a story you can sleep to, not panic to. Now let's move into the part that most people find secretly satisfying. The Sphinx doesn't need a hidden library to be terrifyingly mysterious, because what's already true is almost stranger than the myth. Think about it. This monument sat half buried for so long that people forgot its full body. It was swallowed, uncovered, swallowed again, uncovered again. The desert treated it like a toy, and every time it reappeared, a new generation looked at it and said, what is that? So the Sphinx became like an eternal reset button for mystery. No matter how much you know, the sand makes it feel unknown again. And that is why it's the perfect subject for bedtime stories, sleep stories, and boring history for sleep that isn't actually boring. Because the rhythm is slow. Bury, uncover, wonder, argue, repeat. That rhythm is like breathing. Now, let's go deeper into one of the biggest reasons the myth stays alive. The they hid things before argument is powerful, but it can mislead you. Here's the trap. You hear about hidden chambers in Egypt, and you assume therefore the Sphinx has one too. But remember the simple neighbor rule, Just because your neighbor has a basement doesn't mean you have one. The Sphinx is not a tomb in the same way a pyramid is. It is a guardian monument carved from bedrock. So if there is something human-made beneath or near it, it might be structural, ritual, practical, or later intrusion. Not necessarily a library of humanity. So the better approach is to scale your expectation. Instead of expecting a giant hall of records, expect something more realistic if anything exists. A small chamber, a niche, a block shaft, a hidden cut. And now here's the suspense payoff. Small discoveries can still be world-changing for historians. Because history is not a video game. In history, a tiny clue can rewrite a chapter. Now let's gently revisit something you mentioned earlier in your draft. What does the Sphinx represent spiritually? Because spiritual meaning is the fuel that keeps the Hall of Records idea warm. Spiritual meaning, why the Sphinx feels like a guardian of sacred life. Across many cultures, creatures that are part human, part animal, often represent thresholds. Not because everyone agreed in a meeting, because it's how the mind works. The animal side equals strength, instinct, nature. The human side and mind rule culture. So a Sphinx-like figure becomes the symbol of controlled power. Power with intelligence, a gatekeeper, a protector. And in Egyptian thought, the sun plays a huge role too. The Sphinx facing sunrise amplifies the spiritual vibe. Sunrise equals rebirth. So symbolically, the Sphinx can represent the watchful guardian of rebirth, kingship, and cosmic order. And once you believe that, you naturally want to believe it guards knowledge too, because knowledge feels sacred. Now here comes a gentle twist. What if the Hall of Records is a modern spiritual story built on an ancient spiritual symbol? This doesn't prove the Hall of Records exists physically, but it explains why the idea feels so strong, because it matches the symbolic language of the place. The Sphinx is already a guardian, so modern minds attach a modern treasure, a library, a record, a hidden truth. That's how myths adapt. They wear new clothes, same body, different outfit. Now let's do a relaxing, slow value segment again, something your audience will feel like they learned. The 3 levels of hidden at Giza. If you want to explain this topic cleanly in your video, use this simple model. Level 1, hidden by sand, most common. This is the easiest. Sand covers things. Time passes. We uncover them later. This is why Egypt feels magical. Level 2, hidden by design, tombs and sealed spaces. This is intentional. Shafts, blockade corridors, sealed rooms. This is where hidden chambers is genuinely real. Level 3, hidden by misunderstanding, the dangerous one. This is where an anomaly becomes a room in the public mind. This is where media and imagination turn maybe into definitely. This is the level where forbidden archaeology can go off the rails. And once you present it like that, your viewers will feel smarter, not judged. They'll feel guided, and they'll trust you. Now, I want to feed your script a bit more suspense, real suspense, not fake. Because the Sphinx does have something beneath it that's undeniably eerie. The underground water and the silent flooded pockets image, picture it again. Under the Sphinx area, there are places where groundwater shows up. This means the underground isn't just dry stone. It's stone plus water. And water makes everything feel haunted. Not supernatural haunted, just quiet haunted. Because water hides shapes. It blurs the line. It makes you wonder what's down there. And it also creates a practical barrier. Even if there's something deeper, water makes access harder and riskier. So the mystery isn't only what is there, it's can we safely check? And that's a suspense story that's actually real. Now let's do a little humor again, because the mood needs it. If the Sphinx had Wi-Fi, it would never share the password. You could walk up and say, please, just tell me what's beneath you. And the Sphinx would stare like, no. Not because it hates you, because it knows humans would ruin it. We'd turn it into merch. We'd argue over it. We'd make 900 reaction videos. We'd start a subreddit called Sphinx Leaks. So yeah, the Sphinx stays silent, and maybe silence is the greatest ancient technology of all. Now, we're going to build a small climax inside this chunk, a soft climax. The biggest reason the Sphinx mystery survives is that the official facts don't feel complete. Even when experts say small shafts, natural voids, no evidence of a hall of records, many people still feel unsatisfied. Why? Because facts answer the physical question, but not the emotional question. The emotional question is, why does this monument feel like a riddle? And no geology report answers that. A geology report tells you about limestone. It doesn't tell you why the Sphinx can still make you feel watched. So people keep searching, they keep asking, they keep making documentaries, they keep making theories. Not because they hate facts, because they want meaning. The meaning isn't underground, it's in the experience. When you watch an ancient Egypt documentary about the pyramids of Giza or the Sphinx, your brain does something important. It zooms out of your personal life. It stops obsessing over today. It steps into a story that lasts thousands of years. That's why this is relaxing history. That's why sleep stories work. Because ancient time is a calm ocean. Your problems are small waves. So even if the Hall of Records is a myth, the myth still serves a purpose. It offers comfort. It offers wonder. It offers the idea that knowledge survives. And knowledge surviving is a deeply soothing idea, especially at night. Now we're going to return to the literal beneath for a moment, because your title is still the title. What's covered beneath the Sphinx? So let's answer it again, but sharper, like you're wrapping a ribbon around it. What's covered beneath the Sphinx, in the cleanest terms mainstream view says, limestone bedrock with natural fissures and cavities, documented small shafts and passages that don't lead to large known chambers. Some tunnels likely relate to later digging or treasure hunting. Groundwater affects parts of the underground environment, unamoat. No confirmed Hall of Records. Forbidden archaeology says, some anomalies might indicate undiscovered man-made spaces. The Sphinx may be far older than commonly dated, contested. A hidden chamber near the paws fits the Hall of Records narrative, unproven. Your balanced educational voice says, Egypt still has surprises, but extraordinary claims need physical evidence. Enjoy the mystery, but don't let media turn maybe into fact. Do you know the smallest possible discovery that would explode the internet? Imagine tomorrow, a careful survey reveals something tiny. Not a library, not Atlantis, just this. A small sealed niche with a simple carved mark, a small ritual deposit space, or a short corridor that was never fully explored because of water. That would be enough, because the world doesn't need a massive hall of records to go crazy. The world just needs one new door, one new piece, one new biome. We didn't know this existed. And then every headline would scream, hidden chamber found near the Sphinx, even if it's the size of a closet. So the real suspense isn't, will we find Atlantis? The real suspense is, will we find one more human footprint in the stone? That's honest suspense, and it's still thrilling. Now let's close this chunk with a strong, clear call to action. Simple, not cheesy like you asked. If you're enjoying this calm, deep dive into ancient mysteries, hidden history, lost civilizations, in the pyramids of Giza, if you like sleep stories, bedtime history, relaxing history, and documentary for sleep energy, please subscribe, because we're going to keep exploring the pyramids of Egypt and the secrets of Egypt in a way that's peaceful, simple, and still full of wonder. And I'll leave you with one last question to carry you into sleep. If the Sphinx could whisper one sentence to you tonight, would it tell you what's beneath it? Or would it tell you that the real secret is how easily your heart still believes in mystery? If the Sphinx could whisper one sentence to you tonight, it wouldn't say, there's a library under my paw. It would say something slower, something older. Something like, I'm not hiding one secret. I'm hiding 1,000 human questions. And that's why you're still here. So let's keep going. Tonight we're going to do something that feels like we're walking through a dark museum with a flashlight. But the flashlight is calm. No panic, no shouting, just ancient mysteries, hidden history, and that gentle documentary for sleep feeling. And we're going to answer a question that sits behind your title like a second heartbeat. If the Hall of Records isn't proven, Then what is the real forbidden part of this story? Because there is a forbidden part. Not in the Atlantis is confirmed way, in the this makes people uncomfortable way, in the this challenges how we talk about ancient history way. And by the end of this section, you'll feel it. You'll feel why the Sphinx is still the world's favorite riddle. The forbidden part isn't a room, it's doubt. Here's the truth that makes everyone squirm a little. Even experts don't love saying we don't know. They prefer, we have strong evidence. It's most likely this. Consensus suggests those are careful phrases, but the public doesn't like careful phrases. The public likes, yes, no, found it, case closed. So the forbidden tension is born right there. History is careful, curiosity is hungry, and the Sphinx sits between them like a referee who never blows the whistle. Now let's make this super simple. If you're watching a history documentary about the pyramids of Giza, your brain is doing two things. 1, learning facts. 2, looking for a moment of magic. The Sphinx gives you facts, but it also gives you magic energy, not supernatural magic. Story magic, the feeling that the past is alive. And when you combine story magic with a few real shafts in the rock, it's like tossing a match into dry grass. One little spark becomes a wildfire of theories. So tonight we're going to trace that wildfire gently. Let's do the Beneath the Sphinx story as a timeline you can actually picture. Forget the internet for a second. Forget the angry comment practice. Forget the I saw a TikTok energy. Let's treat the Sphinx like an old house, a very old house. And when a house is old, it has layers, original construction, repairs, renovations, people sneaking in, people tearing parts down, people adding weird stuff, and sometimes a random hole someone drilled because they got curious. That's the Sphinx. So here's the timeline, sleepy and simple. Phase 1, the original carving in sacred landscape. The Sphinx is carved from the bedrock. The enclosure around it is cut. Nearby temples are built. This is planned. This is ritual. This is the ancient Egypt documentary part people don't always appreciate. The Sphinx wasn't just carved for fun. It sits in a religious and royal landscape, a we are eternal landscape. So any original underground features, if they existed, would likely be practical construction cuts, structural checks, ritual niches, or natural cavities they encountered during carving. Not a public library, not a tourist attraction. Phase 2, sand burial, clearing, and repeated rescue. Over centuries, the Sphinx gets buried again and again. People clear it, sometimes for religious reasons, sometimes for prestige, sometimes because a buried sacred monument feels wrong. This matters because repeated clearing often leads to exploration attempts, small shafts, stability checks, restoration work that cuts or drills in places. So some holes can be maintenance, not mystery. Phase 3, treasure hunting and rumor-driven digging. Now enter the human instinct that never dies. Maybe there's treasure in there. Across many centuries, people dig into Egypt's monuments. They widen cracks. They break stone. They tunnel. They fail. But they leave marks. And those marks survive. This is how you can get a tunnel that goes down a bit and stops. Not because the builders planned it, because later humans were hopeful, desperate, greedy, curious, sometimes all at once. Phase 4, modern restoration and modern tech. Now we get documented excavations, careful mapping, scanning tools, seismic surveys, radar, limited drilling. This phase creates the most headlines because tech makes people think we can see everything now. But tech also creates misunderstandings because scans don't show you a photo, they show you patterns. And patterns can be misread. So in modern times, you get a weird mix. Real data, real uncertainty, and very loud storytelling. That's the timeline. Now let's drop into the famous openings again, but this time with a calmer lens. The known shafts and tunnels, retold as a bedtime mystery, You already know the basics, but let's retell them with the suspense rhythm you want, because even a dead end can be dramatic if you frame it right. The head opening, the place everyone wants to be an entrance. There's an opening on top of the Sphinx's head, and I love this because it's almost funny. Like, of course the mystery hole would be on the head, because humans always assume the secret is in the mind. So people see it and their brain goes, secret access point. But the reality is usually simpler. It's a shaft that doesn't open into a grand chamber. It doesn't lead to a glowing room. It's more like an old exploratory hole or restoration-related feature. Still, the fact that it exists is important because it proves people have been physically interacting with this monument in deep ways, not just admiring it, touching it, opening it, testing it. That alone is enough to fuel 1,000 sleep stories. The rear shaft, the quiet dead end behind the dream stela. Behind the Sphinx, near the dream stele area, there's another shaft. Again, not a grand passage. Again, not a treasure vault. But it adds to the pattern. Multiple openings exist, so the solid statue idea dies. And once the solid statue idea dies, people start imagining honeycombs. Networks, hidden corridors, the rump tail passage, the one that feels like a real tunnel. This one is the most cinematic. A tight passage going down about a few meters, partly flooded in places. It ends. No artifacts, no big room, and mainstream interpretation leans toward likely later digging, possibly treasure hunter work. Now here's the scary, satisfying part. A tunnel that ends is like a sentence cut off. It makes you imagine the person who dug it, their breathing, their torch, their hope, their fear, and then the wall. And that is a stronger emotional image than a library. A library is neat. A dead-end tunnel is human, messy, sad, haunting. That's why the Beneath the Sphinx story works so well as bedtime history. Because it's not only what exists, it's what people did. Now, let's step into the debate that fans love the most. The age debate, rain, erosion, and the older Sphinx argument. This is where the story gets spicy, because it's not just what's beneath, it becomes what came before. And that's where lost civilizations enters like a shadow at the edge of the campfire. Some researchers argued that erosion patterns on the Sphinx and enclosure look like water erosion. Rainfall, not just wind and sand. And if heavy rain caused it, that could suggest the Sphinx is older than the Old Kingdom timeline. Older by a lot, like thousands of years older. Now mainstream experts push back with other explanations. Different types of weathering, limestone quality differences, moisture, salts, environmental factors, repair history. So the debate becomes, is the Sphinx older than we think? Or is the weathering being misread? And here's the important part for your script. You don't have to pick a side to make it engaging. You just need to show the tension, because tension is the engine of suspense. So here's a simple way to frame it for a 10-year-old. One group says, look at these marks. It looks like water did this. Another group says, water isn't the only thing that can make marks like that. And the Sphinx says, good luck. Now, if you're going to offer a contrarian perspective, here's a strong one. Contrarian perspective. The real ancient technology might be our misunderstanding of slow processes. Modern people live in fast time. We forget what thousands of years can do. We forget how wind can carve stone slowly. We forget how moisture can crack rock over centuries. So sometimes what looks like proof of a lost age might be proof of something simpler. Time is powerful. Time is the biggest ancient technology. It builds myths. It builds erosion. It builds mystery. Now, don't worry, we're not killing the wonder. We're deepening it. Because if time alone can do that to stone, then the world is more magical than any Atlantis story. Now let's bring back the Hall of Records. But we're going to handle it like a careful storyteller. Not a preacher, not a debunker, a guide. The Hall of Records. Why one myth became the boss fight of forbidden archaeology. The Hall of Records story became famous through modern claims, especially those associated with Edgar Cayce. He described a hidden library beneath the Giza Plateau, with an entrance near the Sphinx's right paw. Then later, scanning surveys around the Sphinx picked up anomalies, void-like features, that got linked to the prophecy. And the world went, wait, what if? Now here's the educational piece that keeps it honest. Scans can reveal anomalies. They don't automatically reveal rooms. A radar anomaly is like hearing a hollow sound behind a wall. It means something is different. It doesn't mean there's a bookshelf. But documentaries often show a neat CGI rectangle, like a perfect chamber. And your brain falls in love with the rectangle. Because rectangles feel human-made. They feel intentional. So the Hall of Records idea gets stronger. Not because proof is stronger, because storytelling is stronger. That's the key. Media turns maybe into wow. Now I want to give your audience a midway hook inside this chunk. Something that makes them keep listening. The 3 things that would actually change the entire Sphinx debate overnight. If you're still awake, listen closely. Because if any of these 3 things happen tomorrow, the whole beneath the Sphinx story would explode. 1. A confirmed carved chamber, not just a void, with cut walls and tool marks. 2. An inscription referencing a sealed space near the Sphinx, something written, not guessed. 3. Artifacts found in context connected to a hidden feature. Objects that clearly belong to a specific ancient time period. Not a scan looks boxy, not someone said. Real physical proof. So the suspense becomes honest. We don't need Atlantis to be excited. We just need one new verified clue. Now, we're going to feed the sleep stories vibe again. Slow camera, soft voice, relaxing documentary moment. The plateau at dawn. Imagine the sky pale blue, the air cool, the first light touching the limestone, the Sphinx facing east, waiting, and the pyramids of Giza rising behind like silent mountains. This is why people call it sacred, because it's not just architecture, it's atmosphere. Even if you're not religious, the place feels like it was built to make you think about eternity. Now here's the gentle emotional value. When you listen to relaxing history about ancient Egypt, something happens. Your brain stops racing. Your heart rate lowers. Because ancient time is slow. It doesn't demand anything from you. It just exists. So your stress starts to feel small. And in that quiet, your mind can hold mystery without fear. That's why this topic is perfect for sleep stories, bedtime stories, bedtime history, boring history for sleep, the good kind, sleep stories history, and a calm ancient Egypt documentary style. Now, let's give you another little suspense arc. The small discovery theory, the most realistic secret, is a small one. People always want the biggest secret, a giant library, a lost civilization, a huge vault. But archaeology often works the opposite way. The most important discoveries are sometimes tiny. A small sealed niche, a blocked crack that turns out to be intentional, a carved symbol, a tool mark that proves a phase of work, a tiny chamber used for offerings. So if the Sphinx has any real secret beneath or near it, the most realistic version is not cinematic. It's subtle. And that subtlety is exactly why it could survive unnoticed or uncelebrated for a long time. Because subtle doesn't trend, subtle doesn't go viral, but subtle can rewrite history. That's the hidden payoff. Now let's ask a question the audience will feel in their chest. What if the Hall of Records myth is the wrong size? What if the myth is too big? What if people saw an anomaly and inflated it into a library? What if the real thing, if anything exists, is smaller and more human? A ritual deposit space, a practical cut, a maintenance feature, that would still be fascinating. Because it would show the Sphinx was part of lived religion, lived politics, lived engineering, not just a symbol. That's value. If the Sphinx had a comment section, it would be the worst place on Earth. One person would type, Atlantis confirmed. Another would reply, source. Another would say, you're a sheep. Another would say, actually, it's clearly Khafra. Another would post a blurry screenshot and write, proof. And the Sphinx would pin one comment at the top. I have been here 4,500 years. Please relax. Okay, back to mystery. The hardest truth, the Sphinx is a magnet for they're hiding something, thinking because of three reasons. 1, it's iconic. 2, it has real openings/shafts, so it feels enterable. 3, access is controlled, so people imagine secrecy. That combination creates the perfect conspiracy shape, even if nobody is conspiring. So your role as a copywriter and storyteller is to guide the audience through that shape without making them paranoid. You can do it like this. Yes, there are real shafts. Yes, scans found anomalies. No, anomalies aren't an automatic proof of chambers. Yes, Egypt has hidden spaces elsewhere. No, that doesn't confirm a library here. But yes, the wonder is real. Why this story hits deeper than Egypt? Because the Sphinx story isn't only about Egypt. It's about you. It's about what you do when you don't know something. Some people respond to mystery with curiosity. Some respond with certainty. Some respond with anger. Some respond with wonder. The Sphinx quietly tests all of that. It asks you, can you sit with maybe? Can you be okay with not having a final answer? Can you enjoy the story without needing to win? And the weird thing is, learning to sit with maybe is calming. It's like training your mind to rest. So the Sphinx becomes a teacher, a stone teacher, teaching patience, teaching humility, teaching slow thinking. That's the real relaxing history gift. The one place beneath the Sphinx that could change everything, without being Atlantis. If there is any future discovery that would truly shift the story, it probably won't be a giant hall of records. It will be something quieter, a verified, intentionally carved feature connected to ritual use of the Sphinx complex. Why? Because that would answer the deeper question, what did people actually do here? Not just what did they build, what did they practice, what did they believe, what did they offer? How did they use this guardian in real ceremonial life? A small chamber or niche tied to ritual could reveal who interacted with the Sphinx, when they interacted with it, how the meaning of the Sphinx changed across time. That would be a real hidden history moment, a human moment. And that's the kind of discovery that's both plausible and thrilling. So the suspense is honest. The story isn't, will Atlantis appear? The story is, will the Sphinx ever give us one more confirmed piece of its lived history? Now we close with a strong, simple call to action. Clear like you asked. If you're enjoying this calm dive into ancient mysteries, hidden history, lost civilizations, and the pyramids of Giza, if you like sleep stories, bedtime history, relaxing history, in a peaceful ancient Egypt documentary style you can fall asleep to, please subscribe. And write in the comments what you believe. Do you think the tunnels are just dead ends? Or do you think there's still one small secret waiting, something human, not mythical, beneath the Sphinx? So that's what this place was really doing. By the end, you won't just be asking what's beneath the Sphinx. You'll be asking the better, deeper question, what did the Sphinx do to people? Because that's the real mystery. Not Atlantis, not lasers, not a secret vault with glowing tablets. The Sphinx's real power is older than all of that. It's the power to shape human emotion, to make you feel small, to make you feel watched, to make you feel like the world has a hidden chapter. That's why it belongs in sleep stories, bedtime history, relaxing history, and any ancient Egypt documentary you put on at night. All right, let's go. The small secret theory gets stronger when you remember. Ancient religion loves hidden spaces. Here's a simple truth. Religions often have layers. Public layer, everyone can see it. Private layer, only priests, kings, or initiates can access it. And those private layers often involve hidden spaces, not always underground, but often tucked away, behind walls, inside chambers, in niches, in place where you don't expect. So when we talk about a small ritual feature near the Sphinx, this isn't a desperate attempt to keep the mystery alive. It's actually a very normal human thing. Humans love sacred privacy. They love having a place that feels set apart. And at Giza, around the pyramids of Giza, the pyramids of Egypt, the temples, and causeways, the whole landscape is basically built to separate ordinary people from sacred space, from royal space, from cosmic space. So, what would a small secret look like? It could be something like a sealed niche for offerings, a cut pocket in the rock for ritual items, a small chamber connected to a priestly practice, an intentionally blocked passage meant to be hidden, or even a construction feature that later became spiritually meaningful. And here's why that matters. If something like that exists, it would be exactly the kind of thing people later inflate into Hall of Records. Because humans don't like small, humans like epic. So a small sacred niche becomes, in the imagination, a library of humanity. A small chamber becomes a vault of Atlantis. That's how myths grow. Tiny seed, giant tree. Now let's ground it even more. The Sphinx and sunrise, a daily ritual that doesn't need a secret room to feel supernatural. This is one of those facts that doesn't sound dramatic until you picture it. The Sphinx faces east, towards sunrise. So imagine you're in ancient Egypt. It's early morning, the air is cold, the sky is soft, the sun comes up, and light hits the Sphinx's face first. That moment would feel like the statue is waking up, like it's receiving power, like it's being fed by the sun. And if you're a person living thousands of years ago and you believe the sun is a divine force, then that sunrise moment isn't just pretty, it's sacred. It's a daily miracle. Now picture a ritual, priests walking in a line, quiet chanting, offerings, incense, and the Sphinx, guardian of the horizon, watching the sunrise. That's already a Hall of Records feeling. Not because there's a library, but because the whole scene feels like a cosmic message. Life returns. Light returns. The king is eternal. The world is ordered. That's big. And it's not fantasy. It's human spirituality. Now here's the contrarian perspective that hits hard. Maybe we obsess over chambers because we don't understand sacred landscapes. Modern people are trained to look for objects. What's in the room? What's under the floor? Where's the treasure? But ancient religion often cared more about experience than objects. The experience of walking the causeway, the experience of entering the temple, the experience of standing near the guardian at sunrise. So maybe the secret of the Sphinx isn't stored in a chamber, but stored in a daily ritual that time erased. And if you're thinking, that sounds too soft, listen, soft doesn't mean unimportant. Soft is where humans live. Now let's bring back the dream stele, because it's one of the most powerful bridges between history and bedtime story. The dream stele. When the Sphinx becomes a storyteller, there's a reason that dream stele story refuses to die. Because it taps into a universal human thing. When life feels uncertain, people look for signs. Dreams feel like signs. And an ancient monument speaking in a dream feels like the biggest sign possible. So the story goes. A prince falls asleep near the Sphinx. The Sphinx appears in the dream. The Sphinx asks to be freed from sand. The prince is promised kingship. Then later the prince becomes king and honors the Sphinx. Now whether you take it literally or symbolically, it does one massive thing. It makes the Sphinx feel alive. Not physically, spiritually, narratively. And once a monument is seen as alive, people assume it holds secrets. Because living beings have inner worlds. So again, the mystery doesn't start with radar. It starts with story. The Sphinx has been a character for a very long time, and characters always have secrets. Now here's a little bedtime twist. What if this dream stele is Egypt's original forbidden archaeology moment? Think about it. A prince says he had a dream. The dream becomes a political story. The story becomes written in stone. The stone becomes proof of the story, and now thousands of years later you read it and go, wait, the Sphinx spoke? That's basically how myths and history blur. A sacred claim becomes a monument, and once it's a monument, people treat it as historical truth, even though it started as a dream. So if you want to understand why people love the Hall of Records myth, look at the Dream Stele. It's proof that Egypt itself already blended mystery, religion, and politics in ways that feel forbidden to modern minds. Now, let's shift into a section that feels like pure value for your audience. Very educational, simple, and still suspenseful. The anomaly ladder. The 5 steps from boring scan to viral secret chamber. If you want your viewers to understand why this story keeps exploding online, give them this ladder. It's simple enough for a 10-year-old, and it's powerful. Step 1. A scan finds a difference. Scientists detect an anomaly. That just means something is different here. Step 2. The anomaly becomes a void. Someone says, it might be a void. Now the mind pictures emptiness, a space. Step 3. The void becomes a room. Media draws a rectangle. A CGI chamber appears on screen. Now the mind pictures walls, doors, a built place. Step 4. The room becomes a purpose. People ask, what is it for? And the mind can't handle unknown, so it assigns a purpose. Treasure, library, tomb, secret vault. Step 5. The purpose becomes a myth. If the purpose is dramatic enough, it merges with existing legends. Atlantis, Hall of Records, ancient technology, lost civilizations. And now the story is unstoppable. That's the ladder. Once your viewer sees that ladder, they can enjoy mystery documentaries without getting hypnotized by them. That's real educational value. That's how you build trust. Now, let's give them another hook. The quietest possible proof that would still blow the story open. If any future research ever found something like this, it would be small but explosive. A carved symbol that clearly marks a sealed feature. A line of cut stone that doesn't match natural cracks. A blocked opening with intentional masonry. Or a tiny deposit of ancient objects clearly placed, not washed in. Why would that matter? Because it would prove intent. And intent is the difference between nature and humans. Nature makes voids, humans make plans. So the suspense isn't, will Atlantis show up? The suspense is, will we ever find one clear sign of planning beneath or near the Sphinx? That's a real mystery worth sleeping to. Now, let's take a slow detour into geology again, but make it feel like a bedtime story, not homework. The limestone maze. Why the ground beneath Giza is like Swiss cheese with a serious face. Limestone is a funny rock. It can look strong and solid, but over a long time, water can dissolve it. Not all at once. Slowly, quietly, like time itself chewing. So limestone landscapes can develop. Cracks, cavities, pockets, irregular voids. And some of these voids can look surprisingly room-like in scans, especially when you simplify the data. So when experts talk about karst features, that's basically what they mean. Rock that has natural hollows because water played with it for a long time. Now imagine that under a site like Giza where humans cut and carved the rock. Centuries of sand pressure happen, and groundwater plays its quiet game. You can end up with underground weirdness. And underground weirdness is candy for the internet, because the internet doesn't want to hear natural dissolution features. The internet wants to hear secret chamber. So you, as the storyteller, become the translator. You take the boring truth, and you make it feel like wonder without lying. Here's a simple way to say it in your script. Even if a void is natural, and imagine how eerie it is that the Sphinx might be standing above hidden pockets of empty space filled with dark water. That line keeps the mystery alive while staying honest. Now, let's raise the stakes emotionally. The most unsettling part isn't what's underneath. It's what time did to human certainty. Think of how many people across history stood before the Sphinx with total confidence. A priest sure it was sacred. A traveler sure it was cursed. A treasure hunter sure it had gold. A modern viewer sure it has Atlantis secrets. A skeptic sure it has nothing. Time humbles all of them, because the Sphinx outlasts opinions. And that's the unsettling part. Not the tunnels, not the voids, The unsettling part is realizing you might be wrong and the Sphinx doesn't care. Now I know that sounds harsh, but it's actually comforting too, because it frees you from needing certainty. You can just wonder. And wonder is restful. That's why people love relaxing history and sleep stories history, because the past is big enough to hold your questions without demanding answers. Humor break. If the Sphinx had a suggested video sidebar, you'd see top 10 lost civilizations you won't believe. Atlantis confirmed under the Sphinx. Zahi Hawass destroys Hall of Records theory compilation. Ancient technology found. You'll sleep to this. Pyramids of Giza, relaxing documentary for sleep, 8 hours. And the Sphinx would click none of them. It would just stare because it already knows the algorithm. It invented the algorithm. The algorithm is called mystery. Okay, back to the investigation. The secret library fantasy versus the sacred threshold reality. Let's compare two stories side by side. Story A, the secret library. A massive chamber exists. It contains the history of humanity. It changes everything. It triggers an awakening. It's exciting. It's epic. It's cinematic. Story B, the sacred threshold. The Sphinx complex functioned as a carefully designed spiritual experience. It shaped how people felt about kingship, death, and rebirth. Small hidden features may have existed for ritual or practical purposes. The secret is the landscape itself. This is quieter, but it's also deeper because it doesn't depend on one hidden room. It depends on an entire worldview. And here's the payoff. Worldviews are the real Hall of Records. They're what ancient people left behind, not just in objects, but in the way they built. Now, if you want to deliver value in the middle, here's a segment that audiences love. A simple myth-busting that doesn't kill the vibe. Quick myth-busting, gently. 3 common mistakes people make about beneath the Sphinx. Mistake 1. If there's an opening, it must lead somewhere big. Not true. Openings can be exploratory shafts, maintenance work, small dead ends, or later damage. Mistake 2. If it looks symmetrical, it must be man-made. Not always. Nature can create surprisingly straight edges and shapes, especially in layered rock. Mistake 3. If authorities say no, it proves a cover-up. Sometimes no means preservation, safety, cost, stability, legal heritage control. Now watch what happens when you say this gently in your video. You calm the skeptics. You calm the believers. You keep the mystery alive without turning it into paranoia. That's the sweet spot. Now, let's add drama again. Real drama. The kind that comes from imagining real humans under pressure. The pressure cooker. Why every Sphinx claim becomes a global fight. This site isn't just a monument. It's a national symbol, a tourism engine, a heritage treasure, a religious and cultural icon, and a global obsession. So any claim near it becomes political. Because once the world thinks something big is under the Sphinx, you get media pressure, public expectations, funding battles, preservation concerns, reputation risk, prove it demands. That's why the story always feels tense. Even the science feels emotional because it's happening under a global spotlight, and that spotlight changes behavior. It changes how people communicate. It changes what gets approved. It changes what gets sensationalized. So the Sphinx is like a stage where the world acts out its relationship with truth. And that, honestly, is more interesting than Atlantis. The Sphinx might be covered by something more powerful than sand. Listen. This is going to sound poetic, but it's also literal. For long periods, the Sphinx was covered by sand, yes. But today it's covered by something else. Noise, information noise, opinion noise, content noise, clickbait noise. The Sphinx is buried again, not in sand, but in stories. And that is why it feels like we still don't know it. Because when a monument becomes famous, it becomes harder to see clearly. Fame covers reality. So the real forbidden archaeology move isn't digging under the Sphinx. It's digging under the noise, stripping away the headlines, the prophecy hype, they're hiding it emotion, and the neat CGI rectangles. Until you're back to the real site, stone, sand, sun, water, human history. That's the deeper investigation. And it's calming, because reality is quieter than the internet. Now, we need a cliffhanger again to keep your series structure strong. So here it is. The most haunting possibility is not Atlantis. It's an unopened chapter of later history. Most people think the secret, if it exists, must be prehistoric. Atlantis, 10,500 BC, lost civilization stuff. But here's a haunting, grounded possibility. What if the most meaningful undiscovered feature near the Sphinx isn't from Atlantis, but from a later period, like a restoration era, a priestly era, or a time when the Sphinx's meaning changed? Because monuments don't have one life. They have many lives. Different generations reuse them, reinterpret them, attach new rituals to them. So the beneath the Sphinx mystery might hide a story about later worship practices, later restoration methods, later intrusion tunnels, or a forgotten phase of use. That's still hidden history, and it's arguably more likely than a lost Atlantean library. So the next question becomes, what did later Egyptians think the Sphinx was? And how did they interact with what? That's a rabbit hole, a calm rabbit hole, a perfect sleep stories rabbit hole. And if you want it, that's exactly where we go next. Now we'll close with a strong, clear call to action. Simple, like you asked, no cheesy tricks. If this relaxing deep dive into the pyramids of Giza, pyramids of Egypt, ancient mysteries, hidden history, and lost civilizations themes is your kind of bedtime history, please subscribe. Because the next part is going to follow the Sphinx through its second life and third life across time. How people reimagined it, repaired it, and possibly left new secrets around it without even realizing. And before you sleep, hold this one soft question. If the Sphinx has survived thousands of years, what's more likely? That it's hiding one giant secret? Or that it's been collecting 1,000 small secrets from every human who ever stood in front of it and couldn't stop wondering?